So in this video we are gonna go through all the Daedric princess lore, literally everything by the way, and then at the end we will figure out which one is the most powerful. Let's go. Before we get into rankings, you need to understand something critical about how power works in the Elder Scrolls universe. The Daedric princes don't follow mortal rules. They literally cannot die in any permanent sense. Kill them in one manifestation, they just reform in their realm in oblivion. They're concepts made flesh, if you can even call what they are flesh. Azura is twilight itself. Mehrunes Dagon is destruction incarnate. Trying to measure their power is like trying to weigh smoke with a bathroom scale. But through decades of games, hundreds of books scattered across Tamriel, developer interviews, and deep lore analysis, we can piece together who stands where when it comes to pure, raw, reality warping power. Some princes have directly invaded Nirn. Others have reshaped civilizations from the shadows. A few have been so threatening that other princes banded together just to contain them. That tells you something about the hierarchy. The power rankings aren't just about who can throw the biggest fireball or command the largest army. We're looking at influence over reality itself, the scope of their ambitions, what they've actually accomplished, and most importantly, how other princes and divine beings react to them. When multiple godlike entities consider you enough of a threat to work together against you, you're operating on a different level entirely. Let's start with someone who actually gives a damn about mortals. Yeah, I know, weird for a Daedric prince, right? Azura is the Daedric prince of dusk and dawn, but reducing her to that sphere is like calling the ocean kinda wet. She represents transition, change, the liminal space between day and night, where anything is possible. Her realm, Moon Shadow, is described as impossibly beautiful. Think cities made of silver with flowers that glow in colors that don't exist in our spectrum. The air supposedly smells like perfume mixed with starlight. It's basically the opposite of what you'd expect from a Daedric realm. Here's what sets Azura apart from most other princes. She cares. Like genuinely cares about her followers and their well-being. The Dunmer worship her as one of the three good Daedra, alongside Boethiah and Mephala. Those two are morally grey at best, so being grouped with them while being called good tells you how low the bar is for Daedric princes. The Khajiit revere her too, calling her Azura, and credit her with literally creating their race. According to their mythology, she took some forest-dwelling elves and transformed them, tying their very forms to the lunar cycles. That's why Khajiit are born looking different depending on what phase the moons are in when they're born. The connection goes that deep. But don't mistake caring for weakness. Azura has a temper that can shatter mountains when you cross her. The classic example everyone knows is what happened with the Tribunal. Back during the Battle of Red Mountain in the First Era, three Chimer, Vivek, Almalexia, and Sotasil made a sacred oath to Azura. They swore they wouldn't use Khagrenak's tools, these reality-warping Dwemer artifacts connected to the heart of Lorkhan. Then their friend and leader, Indoril Nerevar, died under mysterious circumstances. Some say Dagot Ur killed him, some say the Tribunal murdered him themselves. The truth is buried under thousands of years of lies and propaganda. What we know for certain is that the Tribunal broke their oath. They used the tools on the heart and achieved godhood. Divine power, immortality, the whole package. When Azura found out, she appeared before them in fury. She cursed them, told them that her champion Nerevar would return to punish their betrayal. Sothasil, the most analytical of the three, basically dismissed her claims and said the Tribunal was now more powerful than any Daedric prince. Big mistake. Huge. Azura cursed the entire Chimer race. Every single one of them. In an instant, their beautiful golden skin turned ash gray. Their eyes became burning red. The transformation was instantaneous and absolute, affecting every Chimer everywhere simultaneously. They became the Dunmer, the Dark Elves. And Azura made sure they knew exactly why it happened, because their leaders broke an oath and murdered their hero. The entire race became a walking reminder of the Tribunal's betrayal. Think about the scope of that curse. We're not talking about hexing one person or even one city. An entire race spread across a continent, fundamentally transformed in body and spirit. The psychological impact alone was devastating. The Chimer had been proud of their appearance, considering themselves superior to other Mer. Now they looked like they'd been burned by volcanic ash. And they would look that way for the rest of existence, generation after generation, carrying the physical reminder of divine punishment. The Nerevarine prophecy is where Azura really demonstrates her long-term planning and power. She proclaimed that Nerevar would be reincarnated and would return to punish the tribunal and free the Dunmer from false gods. The tribunal, now calling themselves living gods, tried everything to suppress this prophecy. They persecuted anyone who believed in it. They hunted down would-be Nerevarines and killed them. The temple declared the prophecy heresy, punishable by death. For thousands of years, they did everything in their power to prevent it from coming true. Didn't matter. Azura played the longest game imaginable. She waited. Not years, not decades, not centuries, thousands of years. She watched the tribunal slowly weaken as their connection to the heart of Lorkhan became unstable. She watched Dagoth-Ur wake up in the Second Era and start corrupting Morrowind with the Blight. She watched the pieces fall into place exactly as she knew they would, because Azura sees the future, not just possibilities. She sees the actual future, the paths reality will take. The prophecy had 7 specific trials that needed to be fulfilled. These weren't vague, chosen one nonsense. They were precise conditions, born on a certain day to uncertain parents, immune to the divine disease corpus, can wear the ring Moon and Star, which kills anyone else who tries it. Named Hortator by all the great houses, named Nerevarine by all the Ashlander tribes, learns everything about Nerevar's history, mourns the unmourned house, House Dagoth, and finally defeats Dagoth-Ur and destroys the heart's influence. Multiple people tried to fulfill the prophecy over the millennia. They're called the Failed Incarnates, and their ghosts remain in the cavern of the Incarnate on Red Mountain. Each one got close, but fell short. Some couldn't master combat. Some couldn't win the political support needed from the great houses. Some died to ash vampires or got corrupted by Corpus. Each failure taught Azura what wouldn't work, refining her understanding until the right soul appeared. Then, in Third Era 427, a prisoner gets off a boat in Seyda-Neen. They have no idea they're about to become the most important person in Morrowind's history. Azura speaks to them in dreams, guides them toward their destiny. Her voice is the first thing you hear in Morrowind after character creation. They have taken you from the Imperial City's prison, first by carriage and now by boat, to the east to Morrowind. Fear not, for I am watchful. You have been chosen. Chosen. The word carries weight when it comes from a Daedric prince who has been orchestrating events for thousands of years. She didn't just pick someone randomly. The Nerevarine was specifically selected, groomed through trials, pushed toward fulfilling every condition of the prophecy. When you reach the Cavern of the Incarnate and claim Moon and Star, Azura appears directly and confirms you're the real deal. Not a fake, not another failed attempt, but the actual reincarnation of Nerevar. The ring itself is a masterpiece of divine craftsmanship. Nerevar had it made by the Dwemer, and Azura enchanted it with her power. Anyone except Nerevar who tries to wear it dies instantly. Not takes damage or gets cursed, instant death. When you equip it in the game, your character becomes immune to all diseases and gets fortified attributes. In lore, it marks you as the genuine Nerevarine beyond any doubt, because you're literally wearing proof that you're Nerevar reborn. From there, the prophecy unfolds exactly as Azura planned. The Nerevarine rallies the fractured great houses, unites the Ashlander tribes, learns the hidden history of what really happened at Red Mountain, and eventually storms Dagoth-Ur's citadel. They fight through legions of ash creatures, corpus beasts, and ash vampires. They reach the heart chamber, where Dagoth-Ur has become this twisted god thing sustained by the heart's power. And using the same tools the tribunal used to become gods, the Nerevarine destroys the enchantments binding the heart to reality. Dagoth-Ur dies, because his immortality was tied to the heart, Akulakan, his giant divine robot meant to conquer Tamriel, crumbles to dust. The blight storms that had been poisoning Vardenfell for years suddenly stop. The Sixth House cult collapses, and the tribunal loses their divinity. After thousands of years as living gods, Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil become mortal again. Everything Azura prophesied came true. She appears to the Nerevarine after Daegothur's defeat and delivers this speech about how the prophecies fulfilled, the false gods are freed from their curse, and the Dunmer are saved. She gives you the Ring of Azura as a reward, but she's not done. She tells you that your work in Morrowind isn't finished, that you need to protect her people. Even with her prophecy complete, she's still caring for the Dunmer. In the Tribunal expansion, after Almalexia goes insane and murders Sothasil, Azura appears again. She tells you that Almalexia would have betrayed the Dunmer eventually, that her death was necessary. She doesn't gloat. There's almost sadness in how she talks about the fallen Tribunal. They were once heroes, champions of the Chimer. The curse wasn't just on the race, but on them too, living with stolen power, slowly going mad over thousands of years until they destroyed themselves. The Red Mountain eruption in 4th Era 5 fundamentally changed Morrowind. The island of Vardenfell was destroyed. Most of the population died or fled. It was apocalyptic. But Azura's faithful? They had been warned. Her cultists evacuated before the disaster, following visions she sent them. They escaped to Skyrim and rebuilt her shrine there. That's 200 years before Skyrim's events, and her cult is still active, still devoted, still receiving her guidance. In Skyrim, you meet Aranya Ienith at Azura's shrine. She explains that her people were cultists in Morrowind who received visions of the eruption and fled. They rebuilt their shrine in Skyrim and have maintained worship of Azura ever since. The quest involves recovering Azura's star from a necromancer named Malin Varen who tried to trap souls in it to achieve immortality. He corrupted the artifact, filled it with the souls he murdered, and planned to live forever inside it. Azura's star itself is probably one of the most useful Daedric artifacts. It's a reusable soul gem that never breaks. Most soul gems shatter after you use them once to enchant or recharge items. Azura's star just resets. You can use it infinitely, and unlike some Daedric artifacts that come with horrible curses or require you to commit atrocities, the star is genuinely helpful. That fits Azura's personality. She gives her followers tools that improve their lives rather than corrupting them. When you complete her quest in Skyrim, you have a choice. You can purify the star back to its original form, or you can corrupt it into the Black Star, which can hold human souls. Azura obviously wants you to purify it. If you do, she thanks you and rewards you. If you corrupt it, she's furious but doesn't destroy you. She's disappointed rather than vengeful, which shows a level of restraint most princes don't have. Azura's sphere of influence is twilight, that space between day and night, between one state and another. Dawn and dusk represent transition, possibility, change. She exists in those liminal moments when reality is most malleable. Her power isn't about raw destruction like Mehrunes Dagon or domination like Molag Bal. It's about guiding change, shaping transitions, turning prophecy into reality through patience and perfect timing. The ancient texts call her the Urdra, supposedly the eldest of all Daedric princes. Whether that's literally true or religious belief is debatable. The Khajiit certainly believe she's ancient, predating most of reality. Their creation myth has her as a primordial spirit who shaped their race from formless elves. The Dunmer revere her as the anticipation of Sothasil, meaning she represented the coming of Sothasil before he achieved godhood. That shows how deeply woven into Dunmer culture she is. But here's where Azura sits in the power rankings. She's influential rather than destructive. She doesn't invade Nirn with armies. She doesn't try to merge realities or conquer planes of existence. Her conflicts are personal, focused on teaching lessons and exacting vengeance on those who betray her. She operates through prophecy, through loyal followers, through small, careful changes that compound over centuries into massive shifts. The curse on the Chimer shows her power's upper limit. She can affect an entire race simultaneously, across huge distances. She can impose permanent physical changes that last for thousands of years and pass to every generation. That's reality warping on a significant scale. But she's never tried to, say, invade Nirn with a Daedric army or merge her realm with the mortal world. Those aren't her methods. She's powerful, she's patient, she's cunning, and she's probably one of the more benevolent Daedric princes, if we're being honest. But benevolence doesn't equal most powerful. She belongs at number 9 because while she's accomplished incredible things through prophecy and influence, she doesn't match the raw, destructive, or reality-altering power of the princes higher on this list. She's playing a different game, longer, subtler, but ultimately more limited in scope. Now we're entering deeply unsettling territory. Mephala is the web spinner, the prince of lies, secrets, murder, and sex. That combination should immediately set off alarm bells, because Mephala represents everything twisted about mortal behavior wrapped up in a divine entity that sees it all as one big web to manipulate. And nobody really knows what Mephala actually wants. Everything this prince does is wrapped in so many layers of deception, contradiction, and hidden meanings that even the most devoted followers don't understand the full picture. The Dunmer count Mephala among the 3 good Daedra. Good. Let that sink in. This is a prince whose fear includes murder and deception, and the Dunmer call that good. But from their perspective, there's logic to it. Back in the Merethic era, when they were still the Chimer fleeing from Aldmeri persecution, Mephala taught them survival skills. She showed them how to assassinate enemies silently, how to evade pursuit, how to manipulate political situations to their advantage. For a people trying to establish themselves in hostile territory, these weren't evil skills, they were necessary ones. Mephala didn't just teach random techniques and leave. She worked alongside Boethiah to fundamentally restructure how the Chimer organized themselves. The clan system that evolved into the great houses of Morrowind, that was guided by Mephala and Boethiah. Think about that. The entire political and social structure of Morrowind, lasting thousands of years, was shaped by 2 Daedric princes. Every house Hlalu merchant, every house Redorn warrior, every house Tilvani wizard operates within a system Mephala helped create. She founded the Molag Bal, and that alone is wild. The Molag Bal isn't a secret assassins guild hiding in the shadows. They're legal, government sanctioned. They operate with writs of execution authorized by the great houses and the government. You want someone dead in Morrowind? You go to the Molag Bal, pay them, get a writ, and they kill your target. It's accepted as part of the political system. Mephala literally institutionalized murder in Dunmer society and made it a respected profession. The Molag Bal worships Mephala as their founder and patron. They have temples, rituals, a code of conduct, all based on her teachings. Members who join undergo initiation rites that connect them to Mephala's sphere. They see assassination as a service, a way of maintaining balance and allowing political conflicts to be resolved without open warfare. One death instead of hundreds in battle. From that perspective, they're almost heroic. That's how deep Mephala's manipulation goes. She makes murder seem reasonable, even necessary. Then there's the Dark Brotherhood. Whether they're connected to Mephala is deliberately ambiguous. The Brotherhood worships the Night Mother and serves Sithis, the primordial void. But some scholars link the Night Mother back to Mephala through various connections and shared symbolism. The Brotherhood itself doesn't know for sure. They have contradictory stories about their origins. That ambiguity is very Mephala. Even the truth of her influence is hidden in layers of deception. Mephala's realm in Oblivion is the Spiral Skein. Picture a massive cavern with 8 strands arranged like a wheel. Each strand represents a different sin or vice, sex, assassination, betrayal, all the darkest aspects of mortal behavior. But it's not chaos. Everything in the Spiral Skein has order, purpose, position. It's a web, and Mephala is the spider at the center, seeing every thread, pulling the right ones to make events unfold as desired. She sees all the connections between people, all the secrets, all the leverage points where one small pull can bring everything crashing down. The Ebony Blade is Mephala's signature artifact, and it's genuinely disturbing. The sword gets stronger when you betray people who trust you. Not enemies, not strangers, friends. People who care about you, who trust you enough to follow you around. The more you betray that trust, the more you murder people who consider you a friend, the more powerful the blade becomes. That's pure Mephala, taking the concept of friendship and trust and perverting it into a weapon. She's teaching a lesson about how relationships can be exploited. In Oblivion, Mephala's quest has you corrupt someone. The Daedric shrine is abandoned, and you need to perform a murder in a nearby city to reawaken it. Mephala wants blood spilled specifically to spread corruption and chaos. It's not about the individual victim. It's about the ripples that murder creates in society: suspicion, fear, the breakdown of trust. One death leads to investigations, accusations, paranoia. The web grows. Skyrim's quest is even more twisted. You find the Ebony Blade hidden in Whiterun after helping a child worried about her mother's strange behavior. Turns out, the mother, Jarl Balgruf's former court wizard, has been murdering people. Mephala whispers to you through the blade, encouraging you to continue the killings. The blade starts weak, but as you kill friends, specifically NPCs who show the friend dialogue option, it gets stronger. The game mechanically rewards betrayal. You need to betray and murder 10 friends to fully power the Ebony Blade. 10 people who trust you. 10 people who consider you an ally or companion. Some players recruit followers just to kill them for the blade's power, which is exactly the kind of behavior Mephala wants to encourage. She's not just about the physical act of murder. She's about the moral corruption, the gradual descent where you justify terrible acts for power. Mephala appears as both male and female, or neither, or both simultaneously depending on the source. She's called the Androgyne. This fluidity fits her nature perfectly. She doesn't fit into categories or boxes. She's whatever she needs to be to accomplish her goals. She appears in whatever form will most effectively manipulate whoever she's dealing with. Gender, appearance, personality, all just tools for deception. The Khajiit know her as Mephala, and some of their cults revere her as a teaching figure. Different from the Dunmer interpretation, but still recognizing her influence over secrets and hidden knowledge. She adapts her image to different cultures, presents different faces to different peoples. This shows sophistication in her manipulation. She doesn't use one approach for everyone. She customizes her influence based on who she's targeting. Elder Scrolls Online reveals something huge about Mephala's ambitions. She formed an alliance with 2 other princes, Clavicus Vile and Nocturnal, to reshape reality itself. Not conquer it, not invade it, but fundamentally rewrite how existence works. They called it the Triad, and the plan involved using incredibly powerful artifacts created by Sotasil. These weren't normal Daedric artifacts. These were reality engine level devices that could alter the basic rules of how planes of existence function. The goal was to use the skeleton key from Nocturnal, combined with Mephala's weapon and something from Clavicus, to rewrite the structure of Oblivion and potentially all reality. They wanted to become the new architects of existence, replacing whatever cosmic forces currently maintain reality's structure. That's not "I want to rule Tamriel" ambition. That's "I want to rewrite the laws of physics" ambition. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The plot ultimately failed because the vestige stopped them, but the fact that Mephala was involved in something that grand shows her true power level. She wasn't content with her realm, or with influencing mortal affairs. She wanted to reshape existence itself at its most basic level, and she almost succeeded. The 3 princes, working together, came closer to fundamentally altering reality than almost any other plot in Elder Scrolls history. What makes Mephala so dangerous isn't armies or direct power, it's subtlety. She whispers the right secret to the right person. She plants an idea that grows into a conspiracy. She pulls threads in her web that connect across years or decades, and suddenly kingdoms are tearing themselves apart from the inside. The fall of the Morag Tong's influence in later eras actually weakened her direct power on Nirn, showing that her strength is tied to how actively her followers are spreading chaos and assassination. She's deeply involved in the background of Morrowind's entire culture. The structure of the Great Houses, the legal status of assassination, the emphasis on secrets and hidden knowledge, all Mephala's influence. She's not just worshipped, she's embedded in the fundamental DNA of how Dunmer society functions. That's influence on a civilizational level persisting for thousands of years. But compared to the princes higher on this list, Mephala rarely goes for big, fleshy displays of power. She doesn't invade with armies of Daedra. She doesn't manifest as a giant god monster and tear apart cities. She plays the long game, weaving webs so complex that by the time you realize you're caught, you've already served your purpose and done exactly what she wanted. Her power is in making others do the work while she remains hidden at the center of her web. That puts her at number 8, because while she's incredibly dangerous and has influenced entire civilizations, she hasn't accomplished the large-scale reality warping events that the higher princes have. The Triad was her big attempt at that level of power, and it failed. She's a master manipulator who shapes societies through secrets and murder, but that's still a step below the princes, who can directly alter reality or invade entire planes of existence. Boethiah is where we start getting into princes who genuinely don't care about collateral damage or mortal well-being. This is the prince of deceit, conspiracy, secret murder, treachery, and unlawful overthrow of authority. Every revolution, every coup, every assassination that changes history, Boethiah feeds on that energy. They appear as male sometimes, female other times, switching as they please, and they absolutely love watching mortals suffer and struggle for power. It's entertainment for them. The Dunmer revere Boethiah as another of the 3 good Daedra alongside Azura and Mephala. That trio shaped the Dunmer people more than perhaps any other force in their history. But Boethiah's contribution is the most dramatic and violent. They're directly responsible for the Chimer existing as a separate people at all, and the way they accomplished that is absolutely wild. Back in the Merethic era, there was an Daedric deity named Trinimic. Not a Daedric prince, an Aedra, one of the beings who gave up their divine power to create Nirn. Trinimic was the champion of the Altmer, their greatest warrior god, the strongest of the Aedra. He represented honor, duty, military might. The Altmer worshipped him as their patron and defender. He was basically unbeatable in combat among divine beings. Boethiah wanted him gone, not just defeated, gone. So Boethiah consumed Trinimic, literally ate him, devoured his divine essence, and wore his body like a suit. This wasn't metaphorical. Boethiah put on Trinimic like a disguise, speaking with his voice, appearing in his form, wielding his authority. And, while wearing Trinimic's body, Boethiah led the prophet Veloth and a group of Aldmer to rebel against Altmer society and leave Somerset Isles. Imagine the deception required. Trinimic's followers trusted him absolutely. When Trinimic told them to leave their homeland, to abandon Altmer culture, to follow this prophet into the wilderness, they believed it was their champion speaking truth. They followed Boethiah wearing Trinimic's corpse across Tamriel to Morrowind, where they founded a new nation and became the Chimer. An entire race and civilization created through deception and literal consumption of a god. What happened to the real Trinimic? He became Malacath. The transformation was so complete, so violating, that Trinimic ceased to exist as himself. He became something else entirely, Malacath, the Daedric prince of outcasts, pariahs, and the spurned. His followers, the Altmer, who remained loyal to him, became the Orcs. Physical transformation, spiritual corruption, everything they were got twisted. Boethiah destroyed a god so thoroughly that the god's entire divine nature inverted. That puts Boethiah's power in perspective. They didn't just defeat an Aedra in combat, they consumed one. They wore an Aedra's body as a disguise. They turned an Aedra into a Daedric prince. The amount of power required for that is staggering. Aedra are supposed to be beyond Daedric influence because they're fundamentally different types of beings. Boethiah found a way to not just kill one, but to transform them into something opposite their nature. Boethiah's realm is Attribution's share, though we know less about it compared to other Daedric realms. What we do know is that Boethiah isn't just a schemer sitting in the shadows. They're a warrior, a skilled, brutal combatant who will get right into battle and tear through enemies personally. Their followers need to be strong enough to fight, cunning enough to plot, and ruthless enough to overthrow authority through any means necessary. Weakness gets called immediately. The Tournament of 10 Bloods is one of Boethiah's favorite entertainments. Mortals fight to the death for the prince's pleasure. Last one standing becomes Boethiah's champion. It's gladiatorial combat mixed with treachery because the rules encourage betrayal and dirty tactics. Pure strength isn't enough, you need cunning. The ability to stab allies in the back when opportunity presents. Boethiah rewards the combination of martial skill and moral flexibility. In Morrowind, Boethiah's quest is a test. You're sent to kill someone who was supposedly a former champion of another Daedric prince and claim their armor. But it's all deception. The person you're hunting is actually supposed to fight back, and if you're not strong or clever enough, they kill you instead. Boethiah is testing whether you're worthy. The quest itself is a trap that only the strong survive. That's very on brand. Even the act of getting Boethiah's favor requires you to prove yourself through violence. Skyrim takes it way further and darker. Boethiah's quest requires you to bring a follower to a shrine, someone who trusts you, then sacrifice them on the pillar of sacrifice. Not just any NPC, someone who's agreed to follow you, who considers you an ally. You lead them to this pillar, and Boethiah demands their death. The follower usually doesn't realize what's happening until you attack them. It's betrayal in the most direct sense. After murdering your follower, their corpse becomes possessed by Boethiah, who speaks through it. Then, you're sent to fight and kill all of Boethiah's current champions to prove you're stronger. It's a battle royale where you need to defeat multiple powerful warriors in their own hideout. Only by proving you're the most treacherous and deadly do you earn Boethiah's favor and receive the Ebony Mail. The Ebony Mail is perfect for Boethiah's sphere. It's a suit of armor that makes you nearly invisible in shadows and releases a poison cloud that damages nearby enemies. Ideal for an assassin planning to overthrow authority. Sneak up, strike from shadows, poison everyone around you. Combined with Boethiah's teachings about deception and betrayal, the armor creates the perfect tool for revolution and assassination. Boethiah's influence extends far beyond just the Dunmer. Various cults across Tamriel worship them, drawn to the philosophy of overthrowing existing power structures. It doesn't matter what government you have, what system is in place, Boethiah wants it overthrown. Not because the next system will be better, because the act of overthrowing authority is what matters. The cycle of destruction and replacement is the point. New leaders rise, they become corrupted or complacent, they get overthrown, repeat forever. Every revolution in Tamriel's history has probably had Boethiah's touch somewhere. Every major assassination of a ruler, every coup that changes dynasties. They feed on that chaos, that moment when the old order crumbles and new power emerges through violence and treachery. It's not about the outcome, it's about the process of upheaval itself. The interesting thing about Boethiah is their directness compared to someone like Mephala. Sure, there's conspiracy and secret plots, but Boethiah will straight up tell you what they want. Go overthrow this government, murder these people, betray your allies. There's almost an honesty to their approach despite being the prince of deceit. They don't hide what they are or what they want. They just hide how they'll accomplish it until the moment of betrayal. Working with Mephala, Boethiah restructured the Chimer completely. The clan system, the great houses, the cultural emphasis on strength and cunning, that's Boethiah and Mephala working in concert. Two Daedric princes collaborating to shape a civilization that lasted thousands of years. The impact is still visible in 4th era Skyrim, where Dunmer refugees maintain cultural practices rooted in teachings from thousands of years ago. Working through Veloth, Boethiah created the foundation for Dunmer religion and culture. The exodus from Somerset, the journey to Morrowind, the establishment of their society, all guided by a Daedric prince wearing the corpse of an Daedric god. That's manipulation on a scale that affects millions of lives across thousands of years. Every Dunmer alive exists because Boethiah decided to consume Trinamac and lead a religious exodus. In the larger hierarchy of Daedric princes, Boethiah sits in an interesting position. They have personal combat power. They can manifest and fight effectively, which not all princes do well. They have cunning and the ability to manipulate events across centuries. They command respect and fear from followers through constant tests of strength and loyalty. They accomplish something no other prince has, consuming and transforming an Adra. But they've never launched a full-scale invasion of Nirn, never attempted to merge planes of reality, never tried to conquer all of Oblivion. Their ambitions are more focused on mortal affairs, on shaping societies through violence and betrayal, rather than direct reality manipulation. That's still incredibly powerful and influential, but it's a different type of power than the princes higher on this list demonstrate. Boethiah's power is proven through what they did to Trinamac, through their influence over Dunmer culture, through the countless revolutions and betrayals they've inspired. They're a prince who combines direct combat ability with long-term manipulation, who can act both through followers and personally when needed. But that puts them at 7, because while they're devastatingly effective within their sphere, they haven't shown the capacity or ambition to warp reality on the scale of the princes above them on this list. Nocturnal is fascinating and terrifying for one specific reason. She claims to be the oldest. Not one of the oldest. The oldest. The Urdra. She states, before Oblivion, there was Nocturnal, like it's simple fact. Her followers across Tamriel believe she existed before reality itself crystallized into its current form. The Imperial Geographical Society, who've studied Daedric princes extensively, notes that nearly all the royalty of Oblivion acknowledge her claim to this title. Even Sotasil, one of the tribunal who achieved godhood and understood reality on levels mortals can't comprehend, addressed her respectfully as Urdra. She's the Daedric prince of night, darkness, luck, and mystery. But those aren't just her themes or her portfolio. They're her essence. She doesn't control darkness, she is darkness. She doesn't grant luck, she is the concept of fortune and misfortune. She exists in shadows, in the unknown, in everything hidden from perception and understanding. Her true nature might be incomprehensible to mortals. We see her as a woman in a cloak, but that's just the shape she wears so we can interact with her without our brains leaking out our ears. Her realm is Evergloam, described as endless twilight and eternal darkness. Not the scary darkness full of monsters, the conceptual darkness that represents all mysteries, all unknowns, all secrets. The realm has paths that shift and change as you walk them. Geography means nothing there. You might walk forward and end up where you started, or somewhere you've never been, or somewhere that doesn't actually exist in normal space. It's darkness as a place, as an environment, as the fundamental state of existence before light and form emerged. The Thieves' Guild venerates Nocturnal across almost all of Tamriel. Every major city with a Thieves' Guild has some recognition of her as their patron deity. She's Lady Luck to them, the shadow they hide in, the fortune that lets them escape when caught. But unlike most Daedric princes who demand worship and sacrifices and specific behaviors, Nocturnal is hands-off. She doesn't really care what individual thieves do. As long as they operate in darkness and shadow, as long as they steal and sneak and operate hidden from society, they're serving her sphere, whether they know it or not. The Nightingales are her more devoted followers. These are thieves who've sworn direct oaths to Nocturnal in exchange for power. They serve as her agents on Nirn, operating in the shadows, maintaining the balance between light and dark. In return, she grants them abilities beyond normal thieves, shadow powers, luck that borders on supernatural, skills that make them nearly impossible to catch. After death, their souls go to Evergloam to serve her for eternity. It's a real deal with specific terms, enforced by a Daedric prince. The Skeleton Key is Nocturnal's most powerful artifact. and calling it a lockpick is like calling the sun a bright light. Yeah, it opens locks. Any lock. Physical locks, magical locks, locks that shouldn't be openable by any means. But it goes deeper. The key opens metaphysical locks. It can unlock potential, unlock knowledge, unlock paths through reality that normally wouldn't exist. In the lore, it's described as maintaining the flow of nature itself across Nirn. When it's stolen and missing from Everglow, things start going wrong with reality's structure. Think about that. One artifact maintains natural laws, like gravity or time or causality. The skeleton key is somehow connected to their proper function. It's not just a powerful tool. It's a component of how reality operates. When Mercer Frey steals it from the Twilight Sepulchre in Skyrim and uses its power for decades, reality starts having problems. The Thieves Guild's luck goes catastrophically bad. Random chance stops being random. Fortune and misfortune lose their balance. One artifact going missing creates ripples across all of Nirn. When you recovered the key and return it in Skyrim's Thieves Guild questline, there's this moment where Nocturnal accepts it back and reality basically sighs in relief. She doesn't punish you for your guild's failure to protect it. She doesn't demand reparations. She simply takes back what's hers and restores the balance. That restraint is interesting because most Daedric princes would absolutely punish failure on that scale. Nocturnal just wants her key back where it belongs. The Grey Cowl of Nocturnal is her other major artifact, and it's terrifyingly powerful in a completely different way. When you wear the Grey Cowl, you become unknown. Not unrecognized, unknown. History cannot record your identity while you're wearing it. People can't remember your real name or face. You exist as the Grey Fox, a legendary master thief, but your actual self is wiped from memory and record. It's reality warping on an individual level. You're erasing yourself from existence while remaining physically present. The Grey Fox in Oblivion wore the cowl for so long that even after removing it, nobody could remember who he really was. The curse was that complete. His wife couldn't remember marrying him. His friends didn't know him. Official records had no mention of his real name. He existed only as the Grey Fox in everyone's memory, even when he wasn't wearing the cowl anymore. That kind of power over memory and identity is insane. Nocturnal can make you stop existing in people's minds while your body still walks around. Elder Scrolls Online is where Nocturnal reveals her true ambitions and power level. She forms the triad with Clavicus, Vile, and Mephala. Their goal isn't just to rule their realms or influence Nirn. They want to steal the creative power from Sutasil's Clockwork City. The Clockwork City is Sutasil's attempt to create a perfect mechanical realm where everything follows predictable rules. It's his vision of what existence could be if properly ordered and maintained. The Triad planned to use 3 artifacts, the Skeleton Key, the Eye of Magnus, and Mephala's weapon, to break into the Clockwork City's core systems and rewrite reality itself. Not conquer reality, rewrite it. They wanted to replace whatever cosmic forces currently maintain existence with themselves as the new architects. Everything that IS would become something they designed. Every law of nature would be theirs to rewrite. It's beyond invasion, beyond conquest. It's cosmic coup on the grandest possible scale. Nocturnal's role was crucial because the Skeleton Key opens things, including things that shouldn't be openable, like the fundamental barriers protecting reality's core systems. She was the key, pun intended, to the whole plan. Without her and her artifact, Clavicus and Mephala couldn't access what they needed. She leveraged her unique power, opening the unopenable, to position herself as essential to the most ambitious plot in Daedric Prince history. During the Triad plot, Nocturnal makes some wild claims about her nature. She suggests she's tied to the original void, the darkness before creation, that her existence predates the current structure of reality, that when she says she was before Oblivion, she means she existed before the current cosmology crystallized into Aetherius, Oblivion, and Nirn. She claims to remember existence before existence as we know it. If that's true, and other princes seem to accept it as at least possible, then Nocturnal is operating on a different level entirely. She's not a Daedric prince in the same sense as the others. She's something that predates the category, something from before the Aedra and Daedra split, maybe even before the Godhead's dream crystallized into defined reality. That would explain why her realm is pure darkness, rather than a defined landscape. She comes from the void before form existed. The vestige has to stop the triad, and it takes enormous effort. Nocturnal, at her full power, working with 2 other princes, with access to reality-altering artifacts, nearly succeeds in rewriting existence. The only thing that stops them is intervention from multiple factions, the player character with divine backing, and basically every force that wants reality to continue existing in its current form. It takes all of that to stop Nocturnal and her allies. What makes Nocturnal especially dangerous is her patience and subtlety. She doesn't rage or throw tantrums or demand constant worship. She moves in shadows, plants seeds that take centuries or millennia to bloom, and never reveals her full plans until the last moment. The Thieves Guild worships her for generations without realizing she's using them as pawns in much larger schemes. Her cultists call themselves her slaves, and she finds the term amusing rather than offensive. She sees mortals as useful tools, nothing more. The ancient Khajiit mythology includes Namira as the eldest spirit. Some scholars think Namira and Nocturnal might be the same being, just different aspects or names. Others argue they're completely separate entities. The confusion itself might be intentional. Nocturnal thrives in mystery and unknowing. Whether she's really the oldest, whether she's related to other primordial spirits, whether her claims about predating oblivion are literal or metaphorical, she probably prefers nobody knows for certain. Her enemies list is interesting. Azura and Meridia both oppose her, which is notable because those are 2 of the more good-aligned Daedric princes. What does that tell you about Nocturnal's true nature? She also conflicts with Ebonarm and works against the priests of Arche. For someone who claims not to care about mortal affairs, she's surprisingly involved in various divine conflicts. That suggests her hands-off approach is partly an act. She cares more than she admits, but showing that would reveal too much. The reason Nocturnal ranks at 6 is because her power is immense, but often passive. The Triad was her big play for active reality manipulation, and it failed. She influences through artifacts, through the Thieves Guild network, through luck and shadow. Her claim to be the oldest is backed by other princes acknowledging it, which suggests truth. The skeleton key's importance to reality's function shows her artifacts aren't just powerful items, but components of existence itself. But she rarely manifests directly. She doesn't invade with armies. She doesn't physically appear and fight. Her power is in mystery, in darkness, in the spaces between things. That makes her nearly impossible to completely defeat, but also limits her direct impact compared to princes who actively reshape reality or lead invasions. She's playing a longer game than even Azura, working on scales we probably don't fully understand, but her methods are passive enough that she sits here rather than higher. Now we're talking about something that barely qualifies as having a personality by mortal standards. Hermaeus Mora is the Daedric prince of forbidden knowledge, fate, memory, and the scrying of tides. But he doesn't look like a person or even a vaguely humanoid being. He appears as a writhing mass of ice and tentacles, something pulled straight out of Lovecraftian cosmic horror. His voice sounds like it's coming from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. This deep, echoing presence that fills whatever space he occupies. Looking at him too long can drive mortals insane just from trying to comprehend what they're seeing. His realm is Apocrypha, and calling it a library is like calling the ocean wet. Technically accurate, but missing the scale entirely. Imagine endless stacks of black-covered books stretching in every direction into infinity. The shelves grow and reconfigure constantly, forming new paths, closing off old ones. The architecture itself is alive, shifting based on Hermaeus Mora's will, or perhaps based on what knowledge you're seeking. The whole place sits over a sea of ink, and tentacles emerge from everything. The walls, the floors, the ceiling, the books themselves. Here's the insane part. Every book that has ever been written is currently being written or will ever be written, exists somewhere in Apocrypha. Every single piece of knowledge in the universe. That includes knowledge mortals aren't supposed to have, information that drives people insane just by reading it, secrets that reality itself tries to hide. Hermaeus Mora has catalogued all of it. The realm is haunted by seekers, these floating Daedra that were once mortals who came looking for knowledge and got trapped. They went mad trying to comprehend what Mora knows, and now they just wander eternally, searching through books they can never fully understand. Hermaeus Mora calls himself the Daedra in some texts, elder than Ada, which puts him in the same category as Nocturnal for claiming ancient origins. The difference is that Mora's claim is backed by the sheer scope of what he knows. He has knowledge of things that happened before recorded history, things that will happen in distant futures, things that exist in possibilities that may never occur. He knows about the dream of the Godhead, about Kim, about zero sum, about concepts so metaphysically deep that even the tribunal barely grasped them. The Ogma Infinium is his most famous artifact, and it's terrifying in its own way. It's a book written by the god Exarchus that contains so much concentrated knowledge that reading it fundamentally rewrites your understanding of reality and your place in it. In game terms, it massively boosts all your skills. In lore terms, it literally changes who you are as a person. Your mind expands to hold information it wasn't meant to contain. The book is bound in different materials depending on the version, and there's heavy implication that these bindings are made from the skin of different races. That's deeply disturbing and very on-brand for Mora. But where Hermaeus Mora really shows his nature and power is through his relationship with Miraak. Miraak was the first Dragonborn, the very first mortal blessed with a dragon soul and the ability to absorb other dragon souls. This was way back during the Merethic era, during the Dragon War, when dragons ruled over humans as gods and tyrants. Miraak served as a dragon priest, one of the intermediaries between dragons and humans, wearing a mask of power and commanding authority in their name. At some point, Miraak found or was led to a black book. These are Hermaeus Mora's creations, smaller tomes that serve as portals into Apocrypha. When Miraak read it, he entered Mora's realm and met the Daedric prince directly. Hermaeus Mora saw potential in this dragonborn. Here was a mortal, with the ability to permanently kill dragons by absorbing their souls. That's valuable, that's unique. So Mora made a deal. He taught Miraak the Bend will shout, this isn't just mind control, it's reality-bending domination that works on dragons. Actual dragons, beings that are fragments of the time god Akatosh himself, immortal and immensely powerful. The Bend will shout let Miraak take control of dragons and force them to serve him. With this power, Miraak turned against the dragons he'd been serving. He started a rebellion, using their own kind as weapons against them. 3 other dragon priests joined Miraak's rebellion: Ahzidal, Dukan, and Zachrisos. These weren't random priests. They were powerful mages and warriors in their own right, each with their own legendary masks. Together with Miraak, they fought dragons across Skyrim. Miraak personally killed at least 21 dragons. We know this because that many dragon skeletons are scattered around his temple on Solstheim. 21 dragons defeated and their souls devoured by one dragonborn. The dragons retaliated with overwhelming force. Another dragon priest named Vahlok, the jailer, called the Guardian by the skull, discovered Miraak's betrayal and confronted him. The battle between these two was so catastrophically destructive that, according to legend, it literally ripped Solstheim away from mainland Skyrim. The island was broken off and separated by miles of ocean from a single duel between 2 mortals wielding divine power. That's the scale we're talking about. Vahlok was winning. He was about to deliver the killing blow to Miraak, and right at that moment, Hermaeus Mora reached across planes of existence and yanked Miraak into Apocrypha, saved him from death but trapped him in an infinite library. The dragons razed Miraak's temple to ashes in revenge, and Vahlok was appointed to watch over Solstheim forever in case Miraak ever returned. Here's where it gets really dark. Miraak spent thousands of years trapped in Apocrypha. Not dead, not able to leave, forced to serve Hermaeus Mora as his champion. Think about that timescale. Thousands of years. The entire first era came and went. The second era happened. The third era happened. All of recorded Tamrielic history occurred while Miraak was trapped in an endless library, serving a Daedric prince. But Miraak was plotting the entire time. He absorbed knowledge, studied magic, grew more powerful within Apocrypha's infinite archives. He learned things that no other mortal has ever known. Hermaeus Mora let him do this because Mora isn't threatened by knowledge. He is knowledge. Everything Miraak learned, Mora already knew. Every escape plan Miraak devised, Mora had already foreseen. The prince was essentially watching his champion struggle like an insect in a jar, curious to see what would happen but never in danger. By 4th Era 201, during the events of Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, Miraak finally found a way to influence the outside world. He reached out from Apocrypha and started controlling the people of Solstheim through their dreams. They'd go into trances and build these weird otherworldly structures around the All-Maker stones, ancient standing stones that are sources of power on the island. These structures would serve as anchors to pull Miraak back into Nirn. The last Dragonborn, the player character from Skyrim, investigates and reads one of Miraak's black books. That transports them to Apocrypha, where Miraak appears and demonstrates his power. He hits you with a shout so strong it forces you to your knees immediately. Then he mocks you, says you don't understand the true power of a Dragonborn, and dismisses you back to Nirn. That's your first encounter, getting absolutely bodied by the first Dragonborn who's had thousands of years to perfect his abilities. After that, whenever you kill a dragon anywhere in Skyrim or Solstheim, there's a chance Miraak will appear as a semi-transparent projection. He taunts you, then absorbs the dragon's soul before you can, just steals it right out from under you. You see him standing there, this ancient armored figure with a tentacle-covered mask, taking what should be yours. And there's nothing you can do about it because he's not actually there. He's reaching across dimensions from Apocrypha to steal dragon souls. The only way to stop him is to go into Apocrypha yourself and confront him at the summit, the highest point in Hermaeus Mora's realm. But first, Mora demands payment. He wants the secrets of the Skal tribe, their oral traditions about the All-Maker, knowledge they've kept hidden from him for generations. The Skal worship the All-Maker, a nature deity who's probably an aspect of Akatosh or possibly Shor. Their traditions are sacred, passed down orally to prevent them from being written down and discovered. Storn Cragstrider, the Skal shaman, agrees to give up the knowledge to save his people from Miraak's influence. When he opens the Black Book to speak with Hermaeus Mora, the prince doesn't ask for the information, he just takes it. Tentacles burst from the book, impale Storn, and drain the knowledge directly from his mind. The shaman screams and dies as every secret of his people is violently extracted. His daughter Freya watches her father die in agony, and there's nothing anyone can do. Hermaeus Mora got what he wanted. In exchange, Mora teaches the last Dragonborn the third word of Bend Will. Now you can fight Miraak on equal terms. You journey through Apocrypha, walking across pools of ink, past endless shelves of forbidden knowledge, fighting seekers and lurkers, until you reach the summit. Miraak is waiting there with Sahrotar, a dragon he's bent to his will. The fight is brutal. Miraak uses every shout you know and several you don't. He can heal himself by absorbing dragon souls mid-combat. When his health gets low enough, he tries to escape by diving into the ink pools. The first 2 times, he succeeds and heals back to full. But the 3rd time, Hermaeus Mora intervenes. Tentacles erupt from the ink and impale Miraak, holding him in place while the prince speaks. Mora says he's been watching Miraak's rebellion plans the entire time. He knew about every plot, every escape attempt, every moment of defiance, and he didn't care because Miraak was trapped anyway. But now Mora has a new Dragonborn, Ikaich, who might be more useful. So, with complete casual indifference, Hermaeus Mora kills Miraak by impaling him multiple times with tentacles until the first Dragonborn dies. His body goes limp, and you absorb his soul, gaining all his knowledge and power. Then Hermaeus Mora turns to you and essentially says, "You're my champion now. Serve me faithfully and you'll be rewarded." Not a request, a statement of fact. You've entered his realm, made deals with him, used his knowledge. You're his now, just like Mirak was. The only difference is you can still leave Apocrypha and return to Nirn. But you're still Mora's servant. He owns you in ways that matter more than physical presence. That's the level of power and control Hermaeus Mora operates at. He kept the first Dragonborn prisoner for thousands of years, let him plot and scheme and grow powerful, then discarded him the moment a better option appeared. Mirak was one of the most powerful mortals who ever lived. He killed dragons, controlled minds, mastered every form of magic, spent millennia acquiring forbidden knowledge. Didn't matter. Hermaeus Mora killed him as easily as swatting a fly. The black books themselves are spread across Tamriel. Nobody knows how many exist except Mora himself. Within each book lies forbidden knowledge that grants power to those who read it. In Skyrim, you find several black books in dungeons across Solstheim. Reading them transports you to sections of Apocrypha where you navigate puzzle-like structures, fight Daedra, and eventually gain a permanent power. These range from abilities that let you summon tentacles to attack enemies, to powers that reduce shout cooldowns, to passives that make you more effective in combat. But every time you use a black book, you're connecting yourself deeper to Hermaeus Mora. You're accepting his gifts, using his knowledge, becoming more entangled in his web. Each power makes you stronger, sure, but it also binds you closer to a Daedric prince, whose entire existence revolves around collecting knowledge and observing. Mora doesn't want to rule you overtly. He wants to watch you, record everything you do, add your experiences to his infinite archive. In Elder Scrolls Online, specifically during the Necrom chapter, Hermaeus Mora plays a huge role in the story. There's a threat to Apocrypha itself from another Daedric prince named Ithelia, the Prince of Paths, who was erased from history and memory by other princes working together. When Ithelia returns, she starts creating chaos by opening paths between realities that shouldn't exist. Hermaeus Mora reveals that if Apocrypha is destroyed or fundamentally altered, the resulting damage would unravel Nirn entirely. That's how important Apocrypha is to reality structure. It's not just Hermaeus Mora's private library, it's a load-bearing component of existence. All that forbidden knowledge, all those secrets, all those books they maintain the integrity of reality somehow. Without Apocrypha, Nirn would collapse. That puts Mora in a critical position cosmologically. He's not just collecting information for fun, he's preserving reality's foundation. During the Necrom storyline, you work directly with Hermaeus Mora to stop Ithelia. He's surprisingly cooperative and almost personable, which is unsettling. The Prince of Forbidden Knowledge being helpful means he has a reason that serves his interests. Everything Mora does serves his ultimate goal of knowing everything. Stopping Ithelia preserves Apocrypha and ensures reality continues functioning in a way he can observe and catalog. Mora introduces a new class of magic in ESO called the Arcanist, which draws power directly from Apocrypha. Arcanists use eldritch magic, summoning tentacles, using forbidden knowledge as weapons, channeling the raw power of Hermaeus Mora's realm. The class's aesthetic is straight Lovecraftian horror, with green energy, writhing tentacles, and attacks that look reality is temporarily breaking down. That's what happens when you weaponize forbidden knowledge. The class quests for Arcanists involve exploring deeper parts of Apocrypha, including the Infinite Archive and the Infinite Panopticon. These are subrealms within Apocrypha, pocket dimensions that exist outside normal space and time even by Oblivion standards. The Infinite Archive contains historical records of everything that was, is, or could be. The Infinite Panopticon holds Mora's most closely guarded secrets, information he doesn't want anyone else to have. The fact that these subrealms exist within an already infinite library shows just how vast Hermaeus Mora's domain really is. Mora's servants include Seekers, floating Daedra covered in tentacles and eyes that shoot magical beams. Lurkers are massive, brutish creatures that emerge from ink pools to attack intruders. There are also Watchers, spherical beings made entirely of tentacles and eyes that patrol Apocrypha. None of these are particularly strong individually compared to other Daedric forces, showing that Mora doesn't rely on military might. His power is in knowledge itself. One of the scariest things about Hermaeus Mora is his ability to reach into people's minds and extract knowledge directly. Not through interrogation or magic that requires consent. He just takes it. When he kills Storn, Cragstrider, he's not punishing the shaman. He's downloading information from Storn's brain like copying files from a computer. The shaman's death is a side effect of the extraction process, not even the goal. Mora doesn't care about individuals, he cares about what they know. Throughout the games, Mora appears in different forms depending on what intimidates or intrigues the viewer. In Oblivion, without Dragonborn DLC, he appears as the Wretched Abyss, a purple void floating in the air. In Skyrim, with Dragonborn, he's the mass of tentacles and eyes we see. In ISO, he manifests as a colossal presence that fills entire areas. The shifting forms suggest he doesn't have one true appearance. He's whatever form best communicates with whoever's observing him. There's this theory that Hermaeus Mora might have achieved Kim, the state of understanding you're in a dream without disappearing from existence. Kim is ridiculously advanced metaphysics, requiring you to comprehend that all reality is the Godhead's dream while maintaining your individual identity. Most beings who realize this either zero-sum and disappear or go insane. If Mora achieved Kim, it would explain his claims of knowing all things. He'd have access to understanding reality from the Godhead's perspective. Whether that's true or speculation, Mora definitely operates on a level beyond most princes. He doesn't invade Nirn because he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to conquer when he can simply observe and record. Every event in history is already in his library. Every possible future branches out in his archives. He's playing a completely different game than princes who focus on domination or destruction. The reason Hermaeus Mora ranks at 5 is because his knowledge gives him insane strategic advantage and cosmic importance, but he rarely uses it for direct confrontation. His power is passive, observing, recording, knowing. He influences through offering knowledge to mortals who then use it to change the world. He's critical to reality structure through Apocrypha, which is huge, but compared to the princes higher on this list, he doesn't actively reshape reality or lead massive invasions. He watches reality unfold and catalogs it all. That said, underestimating Hermaeus Mora is probably the worst mistake anyone could make. He knows your past, your present, your possible futures. He knows your weaknesses, your secrets, your fears. Fighting him is like playing chess against someone who's already seen every possible move you could make. The only reason he doesn't rank higher is that he doesn't often leverage that knowledge into active reality manipulation on the scale of what's coming next. So next up, we need to talk about Jyggalag, and honestly, this one gets wild. Here's the thing though, when we talk about the most powerful Daedric prince, we're actually talking about someone who barely exists anymore. Jyggalag was the Prince of Order, and before you think that sounds boring compared to destruction or madness, you need to understand what that actually meant. Picture this. Every detail, every action, every single thing that ever happened or would happen across all of Mundus and Oblivion, Jyggalag knew it. Not like a prophecy where you get vague hints. We're talking mathematical certainty. His great library contained formulae that could predict everything through pure logical deduction. He took account of the world before events actually occurred. That's not power in the traditional sense. That's something way scarier. His realm was perfect order, and when I say perfect, I mean it expanded across the seas of Oblivion with each era. While other princes were playing their games and tormenting mortals, Jyggalag was methodically conquering more and more of Oblivion itself. His domain just kept growing, and there was nothing chaotic or random about it. Everything was calculated, predicted, and executed with complete precision. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The Daedric princes are immortal beings who usually can't die, and they rarely work together because they all have their own spheres and goals. They're rivals, enemies, sometimes they make deals, but cooperation? That's not really their thing. But Jyggalag was so powerful, so threatening in his expansion, that they did something unprecedented in Elder Scrolls history. Every single one of them, bitter enemies, complete opposites, they all joined forces against him. Think about what that means for a second. You've got princes who represent destruction, madness, domination, all these opposing forces, and they all agreed that Jyggalag was too dangerous to exist. A prince is normally beyond reproach from other princes. They can't really hurt each other in any meaningful way, but when you get all of them working together, apparently you can pull off the impossible. They cursed him, and this wasn't just any curse. They transformed him into the exact opposite of everything he stood for. The Prince of Order became the Prince of Madness. Jyggalag became Sheogorath. Imagine being a being of pure logic and certainty, and then being forced to embody complete chaos and unpredictability. That was the punishment. But the curse had a twist. At the end of every era, Jyggalag would be allowed to return to his true form. He'd become himself again and immediately do what his nature demanded, bring order to everything. This event was called the Grey March. He would systematically destroy the Shivering Isles, turning them from a realm of madness back into a realm of perfect order, every single time. And then, when it was done, the curse would kick back in and he'd transform back into Sheogorath, who would then have to rebuild the whole realm, an eternal cycle of torture for both identities. This went on for eras, literal ages of this happening over and over. Jyggalag was just aware enough beneath the madness to mourn the loss of his sanity, and Sheogorath was tormented by the knowledge that he'd have to watch his beloved realm get destroyed by his other self. The whole thing only ended during the events of Oblivion's Shivering Isles expansion. Sheogorath, who at this point had been dealing with this cycle for thousands of years, came up with a plan. He invited a mortal, the hero of Kuwatch, into his realm and basically groomed them to become the new Sheogorath. When the next Grey March came, instead of Sheogorath transforming into Jyggalag, the hero mantled the role of the Mad God. Jyggalag showed up as usual to destroy everything, but this time he was fought by a mortal who held the power of Sheogorath. And when Jyggalag was defeated in combat, something broke. The cycle ended. Jyggalag was free to remain in his true form, and the hero of Kuwatch became the new, permanent Sheogorath. Two separate beings now, instead of one cursed entity. Here's what makes this so significant for power scaling. Jyggalag's strength was so immense that it took the combined might of every other Daedric prince to stop him. Not kill him, they couldn't do that, just curse him into a different form, and even cursed, even trapped as his own opposite, the curse was eventually broken. Daius, who was Jyggalag's chamberlain and keeper of the Great Library, said he presumed Jyggalag might seek revenge on those who cursed him after being freed, or pursue even loftier goals. The scary part is we don't actually know what happened to him after Shivering Isles. He's completely absent from Skyrim, no mentions, no appearances, nothing. Some people think he's rebuilding his power. Others think he's already enacted some kind of revenge we haven't seen yet. There are theories that he might be planning something that makes his previous expansion look small. What we do know is that at his peak, before the curse, Jyggalag held knowledge of everything, past, present, future, all predictable through his formulae of logical deduction. That kind of knowledge is power. When you can predict every action, every response, every consequence with perfect accuracy, you're essentially unbeatable through conventional means. You're not just strong, you're inevitable. The 16 Accords of Madness mentions that even Hermaeus Mora, who is called an Ur-Daedra and is described as being elder than Ada, has limits to his knowledge. Mora seeks knowledge constantly, collecting it, hoarding it, but Jyggalag didn't need to seek it. He could deduce it, calculate it, know it through pure logic. Some texts compare this to other beings with prediction abilities. Hermaeus Mora can perceive possible paths of fate. Alkosh and Kenarti can see across the many paths of time. Sotasil could make accurate predictions through simulations, but Jyggalag's ability was described as knowing every detail and every action before they happened through logical prediction. not possibilities, certainties. His Knights of Order were extensions of his will, completely obedient, no independent thought, pure instruments of order. During the Grey March, even some citizens of the Shivering Isles would become priests of order, joining his forces because they couldn't cope with the prospect of fighting against perfect order. Even a duke betrayed Sheogorath during the ritual of accession, the first time a duke had ever turned traitor. When Jyggalag manifests physically, he looks like a massive Knight of Order, except way more powerful. He wields what appears to be a sword, but it's actually part of his model, so technically he fights using hand-to-hand combat, which is kind of hilarious when you think about a prince of pure logic just punching you to death, but that's beside the point. The sword of Jyggalag exists as an artifact, and in the 4th era, a mage named Thoron found it. The sword itself had intelligence and instructed Thoron to invoke a ritual that tore the veil between Tamriel and the Shivering Isles. Just the prince's sword was capable of dimensional breaching. There's another detail that gets overlooked. Sheogorath in Skyrim talks about the events of Oblivion. He mentions Martin Septim turning into a dragon god, butterflies, blood, cheese, all these specific references. He even says the title of Mad God gets passed down from me to myself every few thousand years. This heavily implies the Sheogorath in Skyrim is the hero of Kuwatch who mantled the role, which means the original personality is gone, replaced. But Jyggalag? He's out there somewhere, fully himself, fully restored, completely free for the first time in ages. A being who scared every other Daedric prince so badly they broke their own rules to stop him. That's the kind of threat level we're talking about. Now, compare this to the other princes. Mehrunes Dagon tried to invade Mundus during the Oblivion Crisis and got beaten by one divine's avatar. Molag Bal tried the Planimeld and got stopped by mortals, with help from Meridia. But Jyggalag? It took all the princes working together, and even then they couldn't actually beat him. They could only change him. Some people argue that Jyggalag hasn't shown up since Oblivion, so maybe he's weaker now. But absence doesn't mean weakness. It could mean he's being strategic. For a being of perfect order and prediction, rushing back into conflict without preparation would be illogical. He might be calculating, planning, waiting for exactly the right moment. There's a Chimer temple dedicated to worshipping Jyggalag from the Mythic Age. Descendants kept amulets of Jyggalag as protective heirlooms. This means worship of him existed long before the curse, and some of that reverence survived even while he was trapped as Sheogorath. The zigzag is a marking that displays someone's arcane connection to the mystic geometries of the Orbis. Even the symbols associated with Jyggalag connect to the underlying mathematical structure of reality itself. Knife Point Hollow, which was once his great library, was described as the height of logic and deduction. The formulaic predictions of every action ever taken by any creature, mortal or Daedric, all contained in one location. Imagine having access to that. You'd know how to counter anything before it happened. You'd see betrayals coming, predict enemy movements, understand the consequences of every choice centuries in advance. When the curse transformed him, Sheogorath couldn't bring himself to destroy that knowledge, even though it represented everything he stood against as the mad god. So he cursed Zeus with immortality and stuck him in Knife Point Hollow to preserve the library, or what was left of it. Even Sheogorath recognized that destroying that level of knowledge would be a loss too great. Now, current Jyggalag is described as equal to the other princes in the Cold Harbor Compact. Azura counts him among the strongest princes. Sheogorath includes him among the Daedric siblings. His own account says he is now equal to the others in power, regardless of his origin, but that's post-curse Jyggalag. We don't really know if he's regained his previous level of power, or if being split from Sheogorath diminished him somehow. What we can say for certain is that at his peak, pre-curse, Jyggalag was powerful enough that every other prince feared him. His expansion was relentless and calculated. His knowledge was absolute. His realm of perfect order was growing continuously, and it took a coalition of divine beings to stop him, something that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. That's Jyggalag. the prince who was so powerful that his fellow princes had to literally curse him into becoming his own opposite just to keep him contained. Whether he's still that powerful now, or building back up to it, we don't know. But the potential is there, and that makes him one of the scariest entities in the entire Elder Scrolls universe. Moving on to Mehrunes Dagon. Now, this one's probably the prince most people know about if they played Oblivion, because he's literally the final boss of the main questline. But there's way more to him than just big red demon who wants to destroy everything. Dagon is the prince of destruction, but that's actually more complex than it sounds. He represents violent change, revolution, energy, ambition. His sphere covers natural disasters, fires, earthquakes, floods, thunderstorms. When cultists commune with him, you'll often see flash floods and catastrophes marking the connection. He's associated with destruction, yeah, but it's destruction with purpose. Change through upheaval, tearing down the old to make way for something new. His plane of oblivion is called the Deadlands. Picture collapsed towers with broken bridges on islands surrounded by lava. Everything's red, there's fire everywhere, and pouches of flesh just spawn from unknown sources that can somehow hold equipment. During the Oblivion Crisis, he had several towers that housed sigil stones. The place is basically a hellscape, which tracks for a prince of destruction. Dagon's been trying to invade Nirn for ages, like, this isn't new behavior. During the First Era, he attacked Alt Sota in Morrowind, completely destroyed it, and killed everyone there. Well, everyone except Sotasil, who survived and would later become part of the Tribunal. Later, Dagon destroyed the city of Mournhold. The Tribunal gods, Almalexia and Sothasil, fought him off, but not before he devastated the entire city and devoured the population. After getting beaten there, Sothasil forged something called the Cold Harbor Compact. This was an agreement between several Daedric princes, and it's theorized that it prevents them from directly manifesting on Nirn, so Dagon had to find workarounds. During the Imperial Simulacrum in the Third Era, Dagon conspired with Jagar Tharn. Tharn was Emperor Uriel Septim, the 7th battle mage, except he was power-hungry and wanted to rule. Dagon helped him imprison the actual emperor in Dagon's plane of oblivion, while Tharn took the emperor's appearance and ruled in his place. Dagon also helped Tharn attack the Imperial Battle College at the Battlespire. The Battlespire event is interesting because it was one of Dagon's earlier attempts at using Nirn as a base to launch invasions. He wanted to take over this magical war academy for Imperial battle mages and use it to send his Daedric legions throughout the world. A lone apprentice stopped him, killed his forces, and banished him back to oblivion. Must have been embarrassing. After Jagar Tharn got defeated, Dagon apparently decided he was done with being the power behind the throne. He wanted direct conquest. But there was a problem: the dragon fires. As long as a dragonborn emperor sat on the throne and the dragon fires were lit, there was a covenant with Akatosh that kept the barriers between Mundus and Oblivion strong. Dagon couldn't just walk into Nirn. So he found Mankar Kamorang. This Altmer wizard became Dagon's champion, and Dagon gave him a book, the Mysterium Exarchus. This wasn't just any book. Dagon wrote it himself in the deserts of rust and wounds. Every word is described as razor-fed and secret, thinner than cataclysms. Mankar Camoran read this thing and used its principles to found the Mythic Dawn, a Daedric cult devoted to destroying the Septim bloodline. The Mythic Dawn believed Tamriel was originally part of Oblivion and should be again. They wanted to unmake the current world and return to the Mythic Era where Dagon would rule. Camoran's commentaries on the Mysterium Exarchus were what actually drew in most cult members. He created a whole ideology around Dagon's manifesto. In the year 3E 433, the Mythic Dawn made their move. They assassinated Emperor Uriel Septim the 7th. All of his known heirs also killed. The Septim bloodline was wiped out. With no Dragonborn to maintain the covenant, the Dragonfires went out, and the barriers between Oblivion and Nirn weakened. Oblivion gates started opening all across Tamriel. Not just Cyrodiil, everywhere. Skyrim got hit. Blackmarsh saw the Hist call back Argonians to fight the Daedra. Morrowind faced invasions. This wasn't a localized attack. This was total war across the entire continent. The gates led to the Deadlands, and Dagon's lesser Daedra poured through. The strategy was smart too. Every gate that opened weakened the barriers further. It's described like cracks developing in the firmament. Eventually, if enough gates opened, the barriers would collapse completely and Nirn and Oblivion would merge. What a lot of people don't realize is that other Daedric princes took advantage of the situation too. Dagon took the first bite, but he wasn't the only one benefiting from the chaos. High Chancellor Okato mentioned during the crisis that Cyrodiil was virtually defenseless because he couldn't pull troops from other provinces. The empire was nearly collapsed. But here's where Dagon's plan fell apart. There was one surviving heir nobody knew about, Martin Septim, an illegitimate son of Uriel VII. The hero of Kuwach found him, and the blades protected him. To close the gates permanently and restore the barriers, Martin needed the Amulet of Kings. The Mythic Dawn had stolen it and hidden it in Paradise, Mankar Camoran's personal realm. The hero of Kuwach had to use the Mysterium Xarxes to open a portal there. Inside Paradise, Camoran revealed more of the plan. He intended to return to Nirn and rule Tamriel Reborn, believing the continent was actually a plane of oblivion that rightfully belonged to Dagon. The hero killed Camoran and took back the amulet, but Dagon wasn't done. He knew they'd try to light the dragon fires at the Temple of the One in the Imperial City. So as a last-ditch effort, the Mythic Dawn opened an Oblivion Gate right inside the city itself. And then Dagon manifested physically. This wasn't him working through cultists or sending lesser Daedra. The Prince of Destruction himself appeared as a massive four-armed giant with an axe, towering over buildings. You can see him during the final quest, and he's classified as a giant creature type in the game. He's got two main attacks. His axe deals 50 damage, and his stomp deals over 100. He's invulnerable to normal damage. You can stagger him if you hit him enough, but you can't actually kill him through normal means. Martin Septim made it to the Temple of the One and shattered the Amulet of Kings. This transformed him into an avatar of Akatosh, the dragon god of time himself, manifested through Martin. And that's what fought Dagon. It wasn't mortal heroes or armies. It took a divine's avatar to beat him. The avatar destroyed Dagon pretty handily, then turned to stone at the center of the ruined temple. Martin died, but his sacrifice ended the Oblivion crisis. The statue remained as a reminder that forces of Oblivion could never again openly threaten Tamriel. At least, that was the belief. The Oblivion crisis had massive consequences. The Mythic Dawn was hunted down and eradicated. Groups like the Keepers of the Razor hunted for Dagon's artifacts and broke them into pieces to keep them from cultists. The Vigil of Stendarr was founded specifically to hunt Daedra and practitioners of dark arts. But the Empire never recovered. Martin's death ended the Septim dynasty and the Third Era. High Chancellor Okato became potentate, but without a clear heir, separatist sentiments grew. The Talmor used the crisis to gain prominence in Somerset. They took credit for defending the Isles and eventually pushed to secede from the Empire. They reformed the Aldmeri Dominion and seized Valenwood. So Dagon's invasion, even though it failed, destabilized the entire continent politically. The Empire fell apart over the following years. You could argue he got his destructive change even without winning directly. Mehrunes Dagon has a bunch of artifacts associated with him. The Mysterium Xarxes was his book. Mehrunes' razor is probably his most famous weapon, a dagger that can kill any target in one strike. The catch is, it's got a chance-based effect. In Skyrim, it has a small percentage chance to instantly kill enemies. In other games, it was even more powerful. The razor was kept in a construct called the Nefarivigum, buried in Eyleid ruins. The Eyleids built an entire city, Barsa Baalim, around it to prevent the blade from being released. That city was eventually destroyed. During the Oblivion crisis, a rogue Telvanni mage named Frathen Drothan tried to get the razor to support a rebellion against the Septim Empire. There's also the Spear of Bitter Mercy and the Deadland Hammer that pop up in various games. Now here's what's interesting about Dagon's power level. He's definitely one of the stronger princes in terms of raw destructive capability. The Oblivion Crisis was the closest any prince has come to actually conquering Nirn in recorded history. But he still needed extensive setup, killing the Septims, using cultists to open gates, building up forces over time. When he finally manifested physically, he got beaten by an avatar of Akatosh, not mortals with Daedric weapons or clever tricks. A divine had to step in. That puts him below the Aedra in direct combat, which makes sense. The Aedra gave up their immortality and most of their power to create Mundus, but even their diminished forms through avatars can beat Daedric princes. But compare Dagon to other princes. Sheogorath plays mind games. Hermaeus Mora hoards knowledge. Nocturnal operates through stealth and luck. Dagon goes for direct conquest and mass destruction. He's one of the most actively aggressive princes, constantly looking for ways to invade, destroy, and change the world through violence. Despite his defeat in the Oblivion Crisis, Dagon kept trying. Even in the Fourth Era, reformed Mythic Dawn cultists attempted to open new gates. The last Dragonborn had to stop them in Skyrim's The Cause creation. They wanted to bring about a new invasion through the prophecy of the Dragonborn. There are similarities drawn between Dagon and real-world deities. His name and nature are possibly based on Moloch and Baal Canaanite gods. Moloch was associated with child sacrifice through fire and war. Baal was a weather god whose name meant Lord. While Baal doesn't fit Dagon's personality, the name's meaning might reference his dominion. Dagon's described as having a demonic design: bipedal, multiple arms, horns, claws, tail. His appearance matches the destructive nature of his sphere. Meridia calls him Stone Fire when talking to him, which is apparently connected to Mer languages. His realm, Cold Harbor. Wait, no, that's Molag Bal. Dagon's realm is the Deadlands. Getting my princes mixed up. The thing about Dagon is he represents ambition and revolution as much as destruction. He's not destroying for the sake of it, he's tearing down systems to rebuild them. His destruction serves a purpose: violent change and rebellion. That's why cultists who want to overthrow governments or radically change society are drawn to him. In terms of power rankings among princes, Dagon's definitely in the upper tier. He managed a full-scale invasion of Tamriel. He manifested physically, which most princes can't or won't do. His forces were coordinated and strategic, not just random chaos. And even beaten, he caused enough damage to fundamentally alter the political landscape of Nirn for centuries. Some people rank Jyggalag higher because it took all the princes to curse him, but Jyggalag never actually conquered anything on Nirn. His threat was in Oblivion itself. Dagon actually invaded the mortal realm and came close to winning. Different types of power, different applications. We'll see how Dagon stacks up against the next prince on our list, but there's no question he's one of the heavy hitters. Multiple successful invasions over the eras, powerful artifacts, massive cults, and the ability to manifest physically and fight toe-to-toe with divine avatars. That's Mehrunes Dagon. Now we get to Molag Bal. And honestly, if we're talking about pure evil, about a prince who embodies cruelty and domination in the worst ways possible, this is it. Molag Bal is the Daedric prince of domination and enslavement. His sphere is harvesting mortal souls and bringing them under his power, spreading strife and discord, and just generally causing as much suffering as possible. His realm is called Cold Harbor. It's described as a twisted mockery of Nirn. Everything there is wrong. It's like someone took the mortal world and corrupted it into a nightmare. Blood stains everything. Fear and exploitation are made manifest. The realm itself is described as what you'd get if you embodied the concepts of terror and control into a physical place. Molag Bal appears as a large bipedal hybrid of a bull and a reptile, covered in scales, with horns, fangs, claws, and a long tail. He's physically imposing, and his demeanor matches. He's the master of corruption. While Mehrunes Dagon destroys to create change, Molag Bal destroys to dominate. He wants souls enslaved, spirits broken, people suffering under his absolute control. His titles include King of Rape, God of Schemes, Harvester of Souls, Lord of Domination, Prince of Domination, Lord of Brutality, Lord of Corruption, Father of Vampires, Lord of Cold Harbor, and more. Each one tells you something about his nature. He's not a prince you make deals with lightly, because he will twist every agreement to cause maximum suffering. Let's talk about vampires, because Molag Bal created them. And the way he did it is genuinely disturbing. There was a Nedic priestess of Archai named Lamai Beolfag. Archai is the divine of life and death, and Molag Bal apparently hated him. So Bal found this young, innocent priestess and brutally assaulted her. The texts describe her as being ravaged, defiled without mercy, and left dying by the roadside with only a single drop of blood on her forehead. Her screams were so agonized they're said to still resonate as the shrieking winds when the moon hangs right over Skyrim. Nomads found her and tried to tend her injuries for 2 weeks, but she died anyway. They prepared her body for cremation in their traditional way, but she didn't stay dead. She came back as something new, the first vampire. Driven by rage, hunger, and pain, she killed and fed on the very nomads who tried to save her. Only 3 survived initially, but they became vampires too. When Lamai regained her senses, she called out to Archai to undo what had been done, but he either couldn't or wouldn't. She cursed both Molag Bal, her ravager, and Archai, her betrayer, and swore to destroy them both. Every vampire bloodline traces back to that moment. Over centuries, the clans split and acquired different characteristics, but they all originate from Molag Bal's attack on Lamai. Some vampires worship him as their creator. Others, following Lamai's example, seek to destroy him, but either way, he's tied to their existence. There's some lore suggesting other princes contributed aspects to vampirism. Vaermina's influence gives them power over nightmares and makes them burn in sunlight. Hircine gives them transformation abilities. Clavicus Vile gives them the ability to blend with mortals. But the core power of domination that comes from Molag Bal. Molag Bal's hatred for Archai goes deep. He created vampires specifically to spite Archai, who holds sway over the deaths of all living things. Vampires are undead. They've died, but continue existing in a corrupted state. They're an insult to the natural cycle Archai represents. His relationship with other princes is interesting. He has a particular hatred for Boethiah. Where Molag Bal represents domination and submission, Boethiah represents rebellion and overthrowing authority. Boethiah encourages mortals to murder anyone who would restrain them. Their spheres are directly opposed. Boethiah's followers have desecrated Molag Bal's altars before. In Skyrim, there's a quest where you restore the mace of Molag Bal. A priest of Boethiah named Logrolf had insulted Bal's altar, so Molag Bal wanted him broken. You have to capture Logrolf, bring him to the abandoned house in Malacath, and force him to submit. Bal even kills him once, then resurrects him just to break him further, before having you kill him again. It's brutal. Molag Bal also hates Meridia. She's the prince of life's energies, and she sees undead as abominations. Since Bal created vampires and spreads undeath, Meridia actively works against him. During the events of Elder Scrolls Online, this hatred becomes a major plot point. ESO features the Planimeld, which is probably Molag Bal's most ambitious plan we've seen in the games. The goal? Merge Cold Harbor with Nirn. Literally pull the mortal world into his realm so he could have absolute dominion over every soul. He'd tried invasions before, but this was different. This was total conquest on a scale that made the Oblivion Crisis look small. To pull this off, Bal used massive dark anchors. These things would drop from the sky and start pulling chunks of Nirn into Cold Harbor. You can see them throughout ESO, huge chains dragging the land itself into another dimension. The Worm Cult and other followers worked to deploy them everywhere. Bel also had something called the Mortum Vivicus, a massive spell capable of holding and harnessing thousands of souls. If released, it could destroy all of Tamriel. It appeared as a large orb of cold light and was originally given to an Eyelid king named Anumaril of Abagarlas, a settlement dedicated to Bal. The soul shriven were another aspect of his plan. These were people whose souls Bal had stolen, turning them into slaves in Cold Harbor. You play as the vestige in Eso, someone who is soul shriven but manages to escape and fight back. Throughout the game, you're working to stop the planemelt and recover your soul. Meridia transported the Hollow City into Cold Harbor to act as a safe haven. Since Bal had no power over Meridia's territory, it became a base of operations. Eventually, with the help of the Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, and others, the vestige pushed into Cold Harbor's citadel. The final confrontation is wild. Meridia herself shows up and starts dueling Molag Bal directly. While they're fighting, the vestige uses the Amulet of Kings to gain divine power and face Bal one-on-one. They are described as being equal in power at that moment. The vestige had become temporarily divine through the amulet. And here's the key thing. Molag Bal lost. He was dominated, which is hilariously ironic for the Prince of Domination. The vestige defeated him, and all the soul-shriven were freed to return to Nirn. Bal was forced back to Cold Harbor. His plan failed. But Molag Bal doesn't really learn. He keeps trying. His followers continue working for him. Vampires exist as his lasting influence on Nirn. Every soul he claims through death or corruption adds to his power in Cold Harbor. The Mace of Molag Bal is his signature artifact. It absorbs magicka and stamina in most games. In Skyrim, it damages both and casts Soul Trap on enemies you hit. The weapon itself is corrupted. It's meant to drain your opponents and feed that energy to you. Pure domination made into a physical object. There's a philosophical paradox associated with him called the Molag Bal paradox. It goes, if everyone would express the belief that Molag Bal exists, would he therefore cease to do so because his nature demands he oppose the wishes of others? Basically, since his whole thing is defying and dominating others' wills, what happens if everyone's will is that he exist? Would his nature force him to not exist? Scholars have debated this since at least the Second Era. It gets into questions about whether Daedric princes are truly embodiments of their concepts or if they have some independence from their spheres. No definitive answer, but it's a classic puzzle in Elder Scrolls philosophy. Cold Harbor is filled with soul-shriven and mind-shriven as slaves, with Dremora as overseers. Mortals who disappoint Bal get sent to the Cliffs of Failure, where they are forced to fight each other in an endless war. Vampires serve him there as well. The 701 edicts apparently govern conduct in his realm, though the extent to which mortals are subject to them isn't clear. He's used Harvest Hearts to enslave communities and empower specific aspects of his portfolio. During the Planemelt, destroying one of these hearts in the Orchard section of Cold Harbor reduced the spread of vampirism and prevented invasion forces from being turned. In terms of raw power, Molag Bal is definitely one of the stronger princes. The Planemeld was a direct attempt at total conquest that required massive coordination to stop. He manifested physically to fight the Vestige and Meridia together. The scale of the Dark Anchors affecting all of Tamriel simultaneously showed his reach across the entire continent. But he was beaten by a single mortal with divine empowerment. Compare that to Dagon, who needed an avatar of Akatosh. The Vestige used the Amulet of Kings to become temporarily equal to Bal, then dominated him on his own turf. That's impressive for the Vestige, but it also suggests Bal's power has limits that can be matched with the right artifacts. His influence is lasting though. Vampirism spread across all of Tamriel and persisted through every era. His cults reformed even after defeats. The Worm Cult served him for generations. His artifacts remained powerful enough that seeking them was considered dangerous even centuries after their creation. Molag Bal represents domination in all its forms. Physical, mental, spiritual, he wants to own everything. His corruption spreads slowly but persistently. While Dagon destroys and Jyggalag orders, Bal enslaves and corrupts. Different approaches to power, but all terrifyingly effective in their own ways. One thing to note, Bal is described as one of the strongest Daedric princes, along with Mehrunes Dagon, Azura, Mephala, and Boethiah. Whether he's the strongest is debatable, but there's no question he's in the top tier. His appearance varies across games. In ESO, he's massive, towering over the Vestige with the bull-reptile hybrid design. In earlier games, he appeared differently, sometimes more humanoid. His voice is deep, commanding, with an undercurrent of cruelty. He doesn't need to shout, his presence alone carries weight. The relationship between Bal and mortals is always exploitative. He offers power, but at terrible costs. Vampirism gives strength and immortality, but comes with bloodlust, weakness to sunlight, and potential madness. Deals with him always involve some form of submission. He's not interested in partnerships or cooperation, only masters and slaves. His hatred for Archai and Boethiah drives a lot of his actions. Creating vampires was about spiting Archai. Trying to dominate all of Nirn would prove his superiority over Boethiah's concept of rebellion. Everything he does serves to prove that domination is the ultimate power, that freedom is an illusion, that submission is inevitable. There's a darkness to Molag Bal that goes beyond other princes. Dagon destroys, but destruction can be natural, even necessary. Jyggalag brings order, which can be oppressive but isn't inherently evil. Bal's sphere is actively malicious. Domination, rape, enslavement, corruption, these aren't neutral forces. They're deliberate cruelty. Some players refuse to complete his quest in Skyrim because of how disturbing it is. You're helping him torture and break a priest, and the reward is a weapon built on that suffering. The game doesn't pull punches about what kind of being Molag Bal is. That's Molag Bal, the king of rape, the harvester of souls, father of vampires, one of the most powerful and most actively evil Daedric princes whose influence on Nirn has shaped the fate of millions through undeath, slavery, and corruption. So now we need to talk about Sheogorath. And this one's complicated because, as we discussed earlier, Sheogorath used to be Jyggalag. But the Sheogorath who existed for most of history was the cursed version, the Mad God. And even as a punishment, even as the opposite of what Jyggalag represented, Sheogorath became one of the most memorable and influential princes in the entire pantheon. Sheogorath is the Daedric prince of madness. His sphere covers creativity, inspiration, music, the arts, but also mental illness, insanity, disorder, and chaos. He is unpredictable, which makes him dangerous in ways other princes aren't. You can predict that Mehrunes Dagon will try to destroy things. You can predict Molag Bal will try to dominate. But Sheogorath, he might help you, hurt you, ignore you, or turn you into a sweet roll. There's no pattern. His realm is the Shivering Isles, which is split into two sections, Mania and Dementia. Mania is bright, colorful, full of excess and creativity taken to extremes. The people there are manic, energetic, artistic, violent in bursts. Dementia is dark, paranoid, depressive, and twisted. The residents there suffer from suspicion, fear, and cruelty. Both sides reflect different aspects of madness. The Isles are ruled by two dukes, the Duke of Mania and the Duchess of Dementia. During the Grey March cycle, one would always betray Sheogorath and side with Order. The hero of Kuwach had to deal with this during their time in the Isles. Sheogorath's appearance varies. Sometimes he's shown as a middle-aged man with a beard, wearing fine clothing that's slightly disheveled. He carries a cane. His eyes have a wild quality to them. You can see the madness behind them even when he's being cordial. In Skyrim, he appears as a well-dressed older gentleman, pleasant and friendly, until you realize the things he's saying are completely insane. His personality is all over the place because that's the point. He'll be charming and helpful one moment, then threatening and cruel the next. He speaks in non sequiturs, makes random references, goes off on tangents about cheese or butterflies or whatever pops into his head. But beneath the madness, there's often genuine insight. He sees things others miss precisely because his mind doesn't follow normal patterns. The Staff of Sheogorath is his signature artifact, though what it does varies by era. Sometimes it summons creatures, sometimes it casts random spells, sometimes it transforms enemies into other creatures. The unpredictability is the point. The Wabajak is another one, a staff that does completely random things when you fire it. Turn someone into a chicken, set them on fire, heal them, kill them instantly, you never know. Sheogorath has been involved in mortal affairs throughout history. During the War of the First Council, when the tribunal gods were rising to power, Sheogorath apparently drove Sotasil and Vivek insane. Or at least that's what some texts claim. The tribunal ended up with serious psychological issues, Almalexia went mad and had to be killed by Daenerys Vaermina. Sotasil became a paranoid recluse. Vivek developed a split personality between warrior and poet. Whether that's all Sheogorath's doing or just the natural consequences of using the Heart of Lorkhan is debatable. The 16 Accords of Madness is a text describing 16 stories where Sheogorath made deals or played games with other Daedric princes. Each one shows him manipulating situations to his advantage or just causing chaos for fun. One story involves a contest between Sheogorath and Hircine. A mortal named Isgramor was caught between them. Hircine claimed Isgramor as prey because he was a great hunter. Sheogorath claimed him too, because Isgramor's rage made him mad. They had a duel, and whoever won would get Isgramor's soul. The specifics are vague, but the implication is these princes can and do compete over mortals. Another accord describes Sheogorath tricking Malacath. Malacath bet he could make a deal that Sheogorath couldn't wriggle out of. Sheogorath accepted the bet, and Malacath said, "I bet you can't leave this spot for 100 years. Technically, Sheogorath couldn't break that deal without losing the bet. So he just stood there for a century, which drove Malacath insane because he'd essentially cursed himself to watch Sheogorath stand in one place for 100 years. There's another story where Sheogorath and Vaermina competed to see who could make the most mortals go mad in a specific town. Sheogorath sent a plague of rats. Vaermina sent nightmares. Eventually, so many people went crazy that they couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't, and the town descended into chaos. Both princes claimed victory. These stories show Sheogorath as clever, despite or because of his madness. He thinks outside normal parameters. Where other princes follow their nature predictably, Sheogorath's madness gives him flexibility. He can take approaches nobody else would consider because they wouldn't make sense to a sane mind. During the Oblivion Crisis, while other princes might have tried to take advantage of the chaos, Sheogorath was dealing with his own problem, the upcoming Grey March. He knew he'd transform into Jyggalag again, so he invited the hero of Kuwach to his realm and set them on a path to mantle him. The whole expansion is Sheogorath preparing to be replaced. He's surprisingly honest about it too. He tells you outright that the Grey March is coming, that he needs you to stop it, that the cycle has repeated for ages. There's a desperation beneath his madness. He wants to be free. He wants Jyggalag to be free. The curse hurts both identities. The mantling process involves becoming like Sheogorath so completely that you are Sheogorath. The hero of Kuwach had to make decisions about whether to support mania or dementia, had to use the staff of Sheogorath, had to confront aspects of madness directly. By the end, when Jyggalag manifested, the hero had become the new mad god. After the curse broke, Jyggalag left. The hero of Kuwach remained as Sheogorath permanently. This is why the Sheogorath in Skyrim references events from Oblivion. He is the former hero, now fully transformed into the Daedric Prince of Madness. In Skyrim, Sheogorath is on vacation in Pelagius the Mad's mind. Pelagius III was an emperor with severe mental illness. After his death, his spirit ended up in some weird afterlife, and Sheogorath decided to help by living in his mind. You enter through the Wabajak and have to fix various manifestations of Pelagius's insanity. Sheogorath describes Martin Septim turning into a dragon god, mentions the fox, talks about how the mad god title gets passed down from me to myself every few thousand years. He's clearly the former hero of Kuwach, but he's also fully Sheogorath now. The mantling was complete. One interesting detail, the original Sheogorath's personality seems to have influenced the new one. The hero of Kuwatch didn't just get the title and powers, they absorbed the madness too. Or maybe the role of Mad God shapes whoever holds it. Either way, the new Sheogorath acts almost identical to the old one. In terms of power, Sheogorath is tricky to rank. He doesn't have the raw destructive force of Dagon or the domination abilities of Molag Bal. He doesn't have Jyggalag's perfect knowledge, but what he does have is unpredictability and influence over minds. Madness is a subtle power. Sheogorath can drive people insane with prolonged exposure. His realm reflects his nature. Entering the Shivering Isles for too long can change you permanently. The gates of madness will accept you, but you might not be the same person when you leave. He's affected other princes. The story of him driving Malacath insane by just standing still for a century shows he can even get to other divine beings. His influence on the tribunal gods shaped the future of Morrowind for eras. Sheogorath represents the chaos opposite of Jyggalag's order. Where Jyggalag calculates and predicts, Sheogorath acts randomly and creates. Where Jyggalag expands through logic, Sheogorath spreads through madness. They're two sides of a coin, and both are powerful in completely opposite ways. The thing about madness as a power is that it ignores normal rules. Logic can be countered with logic. Destruction can be defended against. Domination can be resisted. But madness? How do you fight something that doesn't make sense? How do you predict someone whose actions are deliberately unpredictable? Sheogorath's followers are just as chaotic as he is. There's no organized Sheogorath cult in the way there's a mythic dawn for Dagon or a worm cult for Baal. People who worship Sheogorath tend to be mad themselves, acting on whims and impulses. Some are artists pushed to creative extremes, others are just violent and unstable. The Golden Saints and Dark Seducers serve him. These are Daedra specific to his realm. The Saints represent Mania's bright chaos, the Seducers represent Dementia's dark paranoia. They are not as numerous as Dagon's forces or as organized, but they are fiercely loyal and dangerous. There's a philosophical question about whether Sheogorath is actually insane or just pretending. If madness is his sphere, is he truly mad, or is he perfectly sane and just acting mad because that's his role? The answer probably doesn't matter. The effect is the same either way. Some of the most dangerous moments with Sheogorath are when he seems helpful. He'll give you a quest or a task and you complete it thinking everything's fine, and then you realize the consequences were way worse than you expected. Like in Skyrim, he has you restore Pelagius' sanity, but the methods are bizarre and the success is questionable. His unpredictability makes him dangerous in ways other princes aren't. If Mehrunes Dagon shows up, you know he's going to try to destroy things. If Molag Bal makes contact, you know he wants to dominate you. But Sheogorath, he might help you, curse you, turn you into cheese, make you his champion, or just have a pleasant conversation about absolutely nothing. You can't prepare for that. There's an argument that Sheogorath is one of the most influential princes, despite not being the most overtly powerful. His influence on culture, art, and creativity is huge. Every artist who pushed boundaries, every musician who created something revolutionary, every thinker who came up with ideas that seemed crazy at first, you could argue Sheogorath had some influence there. Mental illness in Elder Scrolls is often tied to him. That's both a blessing and a curse for his worship. Some people pray to him to alleviate madness. Others pray to him to inflict it on enemies. The Mad God doesn't discriminate. He'll answer both prayers or neither, depending on his mood. His relationship with other princes varies. Some stories show him getting along with others, playing games and making bets. Other times, he's at odds with them. There's no consistent pattern because, again, he's the Prince of Madness. Consistency would be against his nature. The transition from Jyggalag to Sheogorath and back to separate entities is unique in Daedric lore. No other prince has been fundamentally transformed like that. The curse that created Sheogorath was unprecedented, and the breaking of that curse created a new situation. two princes where there was one. Current Sheogorath, the former hero of Kuwach, seems content in his role. He's on vacation in Skyrim, hanging out in Dead Emperor's mines, giving out his Wabbajack, having a good time. Whether he'll ever tire of madness and try to return to sanity is unknown. Once you mantle a Daedric prince, you are that prince. There's no going back. That's Sheogorath. Born from a curse on the most powerful prince, he became one of the most memorable and influential princes in his own right. Unpredictable, creative, dangerous, and completely mad. Power through chaos, influence through insanity, and relevance through sheer unpredictability. Now, let's talk about Hircine. This one's different from the princes we've covered so far because Hircine isn't about domination or destruction or madness. He's about the hunt. And that might sound simple compared to reality warping or soul harvesting, but Hircine's influence on Nirn is deeper and more primal than you'd expect. Hircine is the Daedric prince of the hunt. His sphere includes hunting, the chase, the Daedric realm of the hunting grounds, and the skin-changer creatures like werewolves and werebears. He represents nature at its most savage, the predator and prey dynamic, the thrill of pursuit, the blood and glory of a successful kill. His realm is called the hunting grounds, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Endless wilderness, forests, mountains, plains, all designed for the eternal hunt. Prey creatures run through it constantly, and hunters pursue them. When a mortal dies who belongs to Hircine, their spirit goes to the hunting grounds. Depending on their worthiness, they either become hunters for eternity or they become prey. Hircine appears in different forms. Sometimes he's shown as a man with the skull of a deer for a head, wearing hunter's garb. Other times he's more beast-like, with antlers and fur. His voice is described as powerful and commanding. Unlike Sheogorath's madness or Molag Bal's cruelty, Hircine's demeanor is more straightforward. He respects strength, cunning, and the purity of the hunt. Werewolves are his most famous creation. Lycanthropy is Hircine's gift to mortals, the ability to transform into a powerful beast form with enhanced strength, speed, and senses. In beast form, werewolves are formidable fighters. They can tear through enemies with claws and teeth. They're resistant to normal weapons in some versions of the lore, and they heal rapidly. But it comes with costs. Werewolves have to transform regularly, or they lose control. In beast form, they're driven by hunting instincts that can override rational thought. They're vulnerable to silver weapons, and when they die, their souls belong to Hircine. They go to the hunting grounds instead of whatever afterlife they might have otherwise reached. There are different strains of lycanthropy. Skyrim mainly shows the companions' bloodline, which they received from Hircine through Turfig. The Glenmoral witches can cure it through a ritual. In earlier eras, different regions had different types of werewolves with varying characteristics. Werebears are another of Hircine's creations. They appear in Soul's Time and are even more ferocious than werewolves. There are also werebutts, werelions, were-crocodiles, and other were-creatures in different regions. Each one represents a different aspect of predatory nature. The Blood Moon prophecy is where Hircine really shows his power. This happens once every era, once every 1,000 years or so. When it happens, Hircine manifests in the mortal realm and institutes what he calls the Hunter's Game. The rules change each time, but the core concept is always the same: hunt or be hunted. The Blood Moon event on Solstheim during the Third Era is the best documented example. There were 4 signs that preceded the actual hunt. First came the hounds. Werewolves appeared on the island. Second was the fire from the Eye of Glass. A pillar of fire erupted from the frozen lake Fjalding. Third was the Tide of Woe. Dead Horkers washed up all along the northern coast in massive numbers. Fourth and final was the Blood Moon itself. The moons turned red with the blood of the hunter's prey. When all 4 signs manifested, Hircine's game began. Werewolves acted as his hounds, hunting the inhabitants of Solstheim. The Nerevarine got caught up in it and had to participate whether they wanted to or not. Eventually, They tracked the hunt back to Mortrak Glacier, where Hircine waited. Here's where it gets interesting. Hircine could have fought the Nerevarine at full power. He's a Daedric prince. He could have just obliterated them. But Hircine considers that unsporting. The hunt requires that prey has a chance, even if it's small. So instead, he offered a choice. He asked the Nerevarine what they thought was the hunter's most important attribute: strength, speed, or guile. Based on the answer, Hircine manifested one of his 3 aspects to fight. The aspect of strength appeared as a massive bear, slow but incredibly powerful. One hit could take down even high-level characters. The aspect of speed was a wolf form, fast, agile, with insane luck that made it hard to land hits. The aspect of guile looked like Hircine's humanoid form but smaller, wielding a spear and using cunning tactics. Each aspect had a name according to Reachman traditions. Hrokibeg, the bear, represented strength. The speed aspect was part of Storibeg, the man-beast. Alrabeg, the hunter, represented guile. There were also Yurikanbeg the stag and Gulibeg the fox as other aspects, though they weren't part of the Blood Moon fight. The Nerevarine beat whichever aspect they chose to fight, and Hircine, he was thrilled. He congratulated them, said he'd return when the next blood moon rose, and vanished. For Hircine, losing the hunt isn't a failure, it's proof that the prey was worthy. That's what makes the hunt exciting. Winning against Hircine's aspect earned the Nerevarine artifacts. The aspect of strength dropped the hunter's amulet of strength. Speed dropped the hunter's amulet of speed. Guile dropped the spear of the hunter, which was considered the best spear in all of Morrowind at the time. Hircine's ring is another famous artifact. In earlier games like Daggerfall, it allowed transformation into a beast form. In Skyrim, during the quest Ilmet by Moonlight, you hunt a werewolf named Sinding, who stole the ring. Hircine appears and offers you a choice: kill Sinding and return the ring, or help him and get the Savior's Hide instead. The Savior's Hide is Hircine's other major artifact. It's a cuirass that provides poison and magic resistance. The story behind it involves a man named Ginalon who escaped from Hircine's hunting grounds. The prince hunted him across multiple realms, and when he finally caught up, Ginalon had learned to defend himself so well that Hircine was impressed. He gave Ginalon the hide as a reward for being such worthy prey. That's a recurring theme with Hircine. He respects prowess. If you're strong enough, clever enough, skilled enough to survive his hunt, he honors that. He's not interested in dominating like Molag Bal or destroying like Dagon. He wants a good chase, a worthy opponent, the thrill of the hunt where either side could win. Hircine's relationship with other princes is competitive. The 16 Accords of Madness mentions a contest between him and Sheogorath over a mortal named Ysgramor. Both wanted his soul, Hircine because Ysgramor was a great hunter, Sheogorath because his rage in battle bordered on madness. They fought over him, which shows that Hircine doesn't back down even when facing other princes. Some scholars argue Hircine isn't an original Daedric prince. He's never mentioned in the earliest histories of Nirn. The theory is that he might be a spawn or offshoot, similar to Malacath. But this gets disputed because lycanthropy existed well into the Merethic era, which would require Hircine to have been around for a very long time. Plus, he's recognized as a full prince by all the others. The Reachmen are particularly devoted to Hircine. In their mythology, he's one of the most important spirits. Their oral traditions describe his 5 aspects in detail. Gulibeg the fox is seen as a trickster who deceives mortals into foolish deaths. Urikanbeg the stag breeds out weakness from Hircine's herd. Each aspect serves a purpose in culling the weak and testing the strong. Khajiit call him the hungry cat. Different cultures have different names and interpretations, but they all recognize the same core nature: predator, hunter, the chase made divine. In terms of power level, Hircine is interesting. He doesn't try to conquer Nirn like Dagon or Bal. He doesn't hoard knowledge like Mora or spread madness like Sheogorath. His influence is more primal and direct. Every werewolf, every lycanthrope, every hunt conducted in his name, that's his power at work. His manifestation during the Blood Moon wasn't about destruction or domination. It was about sport. and when he was beaten, he wasn't angry or vengeful. He acknowledged the victory and promised to return next era for another hunt. That's a different kind of power, not overwhelming force, but eternal recurrence. He can lose a hunt, and it doesn't diminish him because there will always be another hunt. Compare that to Dagon's Oblivion Crisis. Dagon tried for total conquest and got beaten by Akatosh's avatar, and that was a massive defeat that ended the Mythic Dawn and shattered his plans. Hircine fights the Nerevarine, loses, and considers it a successful hunt because the prey proved worthy. Different philosophies entirely. Hircine's power lies in persistence and influence. Lycanthropy spreads naturally once it's introduced to a population. Werewolves create more werewolves through bites and scratches. The disease propagates itself. Hircine doesn't need to actively work to spread his influence. It spreads organically through his creations. The hunting grounds as a realm is infinite wilderness. There's always more prey, always more hunters, always another chase, beginning somewhere. Mortals who belong to him don't go to Sovngarde or the far shores or any traditional afterlife. They go to eternal hunt. For some, that's paradise. For others, it's torment, especially if they're the prey instead of the hunter. During the events of ESO, Hircine had a whole questline involving his different aspects. Werewolf players could interact with him more directly. He offered gifts, challenges, tests of strength and skill, always framed as opportunities to prove yourself worthy. One detail that gets overlooked, Hircine considers fighting at full power to be unsporting. This implies he could fight at full power and just chooses not to. When he faces the Nerevarine, he deliberately limits himself by only manifesting one aspect. That's either incredible confidence or genuine sportsmanship. Maybe both. His artifacts are powerful, but not world-ending. The Spear of the Hunter was the best spear in Morrowind. The ring allows transformations. The Savior's Hide provides good protection. Compared to Mehrunes' Razor with its instant kill ability, or Molag Bal's Mace with Soul Trap, Hircine's artifacts are more balanced. They give advantages without being completely broken. There's a philosophical question about whether Hircine's hunt is evil. He's killing mortals or sending them to hunt each other. But he's also giving them a chance to fight back, to prove themselves, to earn his respect. Is a predator evil for hunting prey? In nature, that's just survival. Hircine embodies that natural law, but applies it to mortals and immortals alike. Some scholars argue that Hircine represents the most honest form of power among the princes. He doesn't scheme like Mephala or manipulate like Clavicus Vile. He doesn't hide his nature or lie about his intentions. He says, "I'm going to hunt you," and then he does. There's a brutal honesty to that. Werewolves in Skyrim can cure themselves through the Companion's questline, but doing so means Hircine releases their soul. They're no longer bound to the hunting grounds. Some werewolves choose not to cure themselves specifically because they want to hunt forever in the afterlife. Hircine's realm is their idea of paradise. The Wild Hunt is another phenomenon associated with Hircine, though it shows up differently in different contexts. In Valenwood, the Wild Hunt is a transformation the Bosmer undergo, where they become primal beasts. Whether Hircine causes that or just presides over it is unclear, but the connection between him and savage transformations into bestial forms is consistent. Hircine's summoning date is the 5th of mid-year. Cultists who worship him conduct hunts on that date. Some villages conduct ritual hunts to honor him, usually targeting dangerous animals or monsters. As long as the hunt is fair and the prey has a chance, Hircine approves. In terms of combat ability, we've only seen his aspects fight, not his full form. The aspects were tough, but beatable by a sufficiently powerful mortal. That puts them below Mehrunes Dagon, who needed a divine avatar, but Hircine deliberately holds back, so his true combat power is unknown. His influence is subtler than other princes. Mehrunes Dagon opens gates and invades with armies. Molag Bal drops dark anchors and pulls chunks of Nirn into Cold Harbor. Hircine, he creates lycanthropes and lets them spread naturally. He appears once per era for a hunt and then leaves. His footprint is smaller but more lasting. Every werewolf in Tamriel is proof of his power. Every hunt conducted in his name, every transformation, every soul that ends up in the hunting grounds. That's Hircine's reach. It's distributed, decentralized, embedded into the world rather than imposed from outside. That makes him harder to fight than princes who manifest directly. You can close oblivion gates, you can destroy dark anchors, but how do you stop lycanthropy from spreading? How do you prevent people from hunting? You can't, not really. Hircine's influence is woven into the natural order of predator and prey. Some people rank him lower than other princes because his ambitions seem smaller. He's not trying to rule the world or harvest every soul, but that might be missing the point. Hircine already has what he wants: eternal hunt, worthy prey, the thrill of the chase repeating forever. He doesn't need to conquer because he's already achieved his goal. That's Hircine, the huntsman, father of man-beasts, the hungry cat, a prince whose power lies in the primal nature of the hunt, whose influence spreads through lycanthropy, and whose greatest strength might be that he doesn't need to prove himself because the hunt is its own reward. Next, let's talk about Malacath. So here's where things get complicated right out of the gate. Malacath might be the most tragic figure in the entire Daedric pantheon. And I don't mean tragic in a sympathetic way. I mean tragic in the sense that his entire existence is built on humiliation, transformation, and spite. Malacath wasn't always Malacath. Way back in the Merithic era, he was Trinimac. And Trinimac? Trinimac was one of the strongest Aedra. Not just strong sprint, he was described as the champion of Auriel himself, the most powerful warrior spirit in the entire Aldmeri pantheon. In some places, he was even more popular than Auriel. Think about that. This guy was the warrior god of the elves. When the Chimer decided they wanted to leave the Somerset Isles, this whole exodus led by the prophet Veloth, Trinimac tried to stop them. He wasn't going to let Boethiah split his people apart. So Trinimac confronted Boethiah directly, and Boethiah destroyed him. Different accounts tell the story different ways. The most common version says Boethiah literally ate Trinimac, consumed him whole, spoke with his voice to mock the Aldmer and encourage the Chimer, then excreted what remained. The remains became Malacath. Other versions say Mephala stabbed Trinimac in the back while he was fighting Boethiah, bringing him to his knees so Boethiah could curse him. The Orcish version says that after being defeated and cursed, Trinimac was cast into the ash pit, where he tore the shame from his own chest and was reborn as Malacath. His followers, Trinimac's devoted followers, were transformed too. They became the Orsimer, the orcs. Their skin turned green, their features warped, and they became exactly what Malacath represents: the spurned, the ostracized, the outcasts. Now here's the thing that makes Malacath fascinating from a power perspective. The other Daedric princes don't recognize him as a true prince. They don't acknowledge him as their equal. He's described as weak but vengeful in some texts. He allegedly isn't even recognized as a Daedra lord by his peers. But when you actually look at what Malacath does, when you look at his influence, that label of weak starts looking really suspicious. First, Malacath has an entire race dedicated to him. The orcs might be scattered, might be constantly fighting for survival, but they're everywhere. They're in every province. They've built multiple iterations of Orsinium, and their culture is completely shaped by Malacath's teachings. That's not nothing. Second, Malacath is a prince of the sworn oath, the bloody curse, vengeance, and conflict. His sphere encompasses broken promises and anguish. And look around Tamriel. How often do those things happen? Constantly. Every broken promise, every betrayal, every act of vengeance feeds into his sphere. Even if the other princes don't want to admit it, Malacath's influence is woven into the fabric of mortal conflict. Third, and this is where it gets really interesting, some sources suggest Malacath might actually be equal to the other princes now, regardless of his origin. Azura, who would know, counts him among the most powerful princes. He signed the Cold Harbor Compact alongside Molag Bal, Mehrunes Dagon, Vaermina, Clavicus, Vile, Mephala, Malacath himself, and Meridia. You don't get invited to that party if you're actually weak. Sheogorath includes him among the Daedric siblings in the 16 Accords of Madness. The ash pit, Malacath's realm, is harsh. It's described as consisting of dust, palaces of smoke, and vaporous creatures. Anguish, betrayal, and broken promises fill the air like ash. It's hidden, hard to access. The pathways to his domain are concealed to protect the disenfranchised and cast out. And somewhere deep within the ash pit, there's supposedly a clearing, green grass, light, utter peace. The part of Malacath that's still Trinimac. But Malacath hides it, rejects it, because accepting that peace would mean accepting the weakness that led to his downfall. Let's talk about his enemies and allies. The Dunmer consider him one of the four corners of the House of Troubles, alongside Mehrunes Dagon, Molag Bal, and Sheogorath. These are the four Daedric princes who refused to recognize the authority of the tribunal and actively sought to undermine them. The Nords blame him, or rather, his Nordic aspect Orki, for stealing mankind's long lifespans. Malacath has a straightforward approach. He doesn't play the manipulation games that Mephala loves. He doesn't make elaborate deals like Clavicus Vile. He just enforces his will through raw determination and the occasional devastating curse. When someone betrays an oath sworn in his name, Malacath doesn't forget. He's patient, he's vengeful, and he will make you suffer the consequences. His artifacts reflect this. Volendrung is a massive warhammer that was originally Dwemer made, but has become so associated with Malacath that it's effectively his now. The scourge is specifically designed to harm other Daedra, a weapon Malacath could use against the princes who don't recognize him. Some sources claim he forged the Savior's hide, though that's disputed. Throughout the games, Malacath's quests always involve honor, revenge, or protecting outcasts. In Morrowind, he tasks the Nerevarine with killing the last of the Orin Bearclaw family, because Orin took all the glory for deeds actually done by his orcish companion. In Oblivion, you rescue enslaved ogres. In Skyrim, you deal with Chief Yamar's cowardice. Malacath curses his entire stronghold because Yamars broke the old ways. Now, about his power level. Is Malacath the strongest prince? No, but is he weak? Absolutely not. His resilience is what makes him terrifying. He was an Aedra who was consumed, corrupted, and transformed by a Daedric prince, something that should have destroyed him completely. Instead, he came back. He carved out his own realm in Oblivion. He established himself as a prince, despite the others not wanting to recognize him. And here's the kicker. Malacath represents something the other princes don't want to acknowledge. He's proof that the line between Aedra and Daedra isn't as fixed as everyone thinks. He's proof that a being can be transformed, corrupted, and still retain enough of themselves to become something new and powerful. The other princes reject him because accepting him means accepting that their neat categories aren't as neat as they'd like. There's also the whole thing with some orcs rejecting Malacath entirely and trying to worship Trinimac again. This happened in the Second Orsinium under King Kurog and in the Third Orsinium under King Gortwog. Both times it caused massive problems. The Voshrak in ESO were Trinimac extremists who tortured and brainwashed people. It ended with King Kurog dead and the bright new order damaged. What does this tell us about Malacath's power? It tells us he's persistent. He's resilient in a way that goes beyond normal Daedric immortality. Even parts of his own people trying to reject him and worship his former self doesn't diminish him. He just keeps going, keeps enforcing his sphere, keeps being the patron of everyone society kicks to the curb. So, power-wise, Malacath sits in this weird middle tier. He's not Jyggalag level where he needed every other prince working together to stop him. He's not Nocturnal level with claims of being the original Void, but he's also definitely not weak. He's a prince who turned ultimate humiliation into a source of power, who built a sphere out of the very things that were used to destroy him. That takes a special kind of strength. Next, let's talk about Clavicus Vile. If Malacath is about raw determination, despite humiliation, Clavicus Vile is about being so smart that you end up causing half your own problems. Clavicus Vile is the Daedric prince of power, trickery, wishes, serenity, and bargains. He's known as the child god of the morning star, the master of insidious wishes, and the consummate politician of oblivion. And that last title? That's actually the most accurate one. Vile appears as a small, jovial, imp-like horned man. He's always depicted with Barbas, his shape-shifting companion who usually takes the form of a dog but can appear as other things, like a scamp named Creeper. The relationship between Vile and Barbas is one of the strangest in all of Daedric lore. Here's the thing. Barbas isn't just a servant. Vile stores up to half his power within Barbas, and there's serious speculation that they're actually two halves of the same being. Vile's very social nature wouldn't allow him to exist without a companion. When they're separated, Vile becomes significantly weaker, to the point where he can't manifest outside the immediate vicinity of his shrine. We see this in Skyrim. Vile and Barbas have an argument, Vile kicks Barbas out, and suddenly Vile is stuck at his shrine in Haemar's shame, unable to do much of anything. He needs you to either bring back Barbas or kill Barbas so he can reabsorb the power without having to listen to him anymore. But when they're together, when Vile has access to his full power, that's where things get interesting. Vile's sphere is granting wishes and making bargains. He's a deal maker. And unlike some of the other princes who just want to cause chaos or destruction, Vile seems to genuinely enjoy the process. He likes watching mortals make deals, seeing how they interpret his words, watching them realize too late that they didn't read the fine print. The Mask of Clavicus Vile is his most famous artifact. It makes you more persuasive, improves your speech, makes merchants like you better. It even regenerates magicka. Seems like a good deal, right? But there's always a catch. Always. His other artifacts are scattered everywhere. He's created more Daedric artifacts than almost any other prince. There's the Ring of Clavicus Vile, the Umbra Sword, which we'll get to, the Bitter Cup that can increase your highest attributes, even a quill that improves writing skills. He just hands these things out like candy, but every single one comes with strings attached. And then there's Umbra. Oh boy, Umbra. Umbra is a sentient sword that Vile created, and it became such a problem that it nearly destroyed everything. In the early 4th era, Umbra managed to siphon power from Clavicus Vile, create a giant floating Daedric city called Umbriel, and almost conquer all of Tamriel. This thing that Vile made became so powerful that it could steal his power and use it against him. The Umbriel Crisis is one of the most devastating events in Elder Scrolls history. Umbriel floated across Tamriel, killing everything beneath it and raising the dead as undead servants. It took the combined efforts of Sul and Atrebus Mada to stop it, and even then, they needed to basically manipulate Vile himself to make it work. And here's what's crazy about that whole situation. It weakened Vile so much that his entire realm, the Fields of Regret, shrunk down to just a few miles across. His Daedric realm physically got smaller because he lost that much power, a rare example of a prince's domain shrinking due to diminished strength. But Vile's response to this? He claimed he'd actually become more powerful by spreading himself less thin. Classic Vile move, turn a massive loss into a supposed strategic victory. The Fields of Regret itself is fascinating. It appears as idyllic countryside, merchant utopias, fields of white clovers, woodland meadows, twisted foliage. The sky is blue with cottony clouds. Sounds nice, right? Except the air smells of both perfume and rotting flesh. And those melted-looking places scattered around, those are the signs of wishes gone wrong. Throughout the series, Vile's quests always involve wishes with twisted consequences. In Oblivion, he wants you to get the Umbra Sword, and Barbas literally warns you that giving it to Vile would be a mistake. In Skyrim, he offers to grant whatever wish you want, end the civil war, give you power, reunite him with Barbas. If you ask him to end the civil war, he says he'll make sure it ends by having dragons kill everyone. If you ask for power, he offers to let your soul be absorbed by the Rueful Axe. The Rueful Axe itself is a perfect example of Vile's style. A man named Sebastian Lort asked Vile to cure his daughter's lycanthropy, so Vile gave him the Rueful Axe, a weapon powerful enough to kill his daughter. Technically, that solves the problem. The daughter won't be a werewolf anymore. She'll be dead. Wish granted. Vile's power comes from his intelligence. He's described as a super genius even by Daedric standards, and Daedra already have witnessed all of mortal existence and understand the paradoxical nature of higher realms. Vile has created multiple artifacts, manipulated countless mortals, established himself as a patron to Cyrodiil's vampire clans, giving them the ability to walk in daylight so they can blend into mortal society. And he's done it all while maintaining this jovial, friendly persona. But here's where Vile's power becomes really interesting. He's one of the few princes who seems to genuinely understand the political games of Oblivion. When Nocturnal, Mephala, and Vile formed a triad and tried to steal the power of the Crystal Tower for themselves, it was Vile who understood how to manipulate the situation. When Nocturnal betrayed them and tried to achieve omnipresence across the entire Orbis, both Vile and Mephala immediately manifested in her realm to stop her. That tells you something important. Vile can manifest in other princes' realms when he needs to. He can react quickly to cosmic level threats. And he understands the power structures of Oblivion well enough to know when to make alliances and when to break them. Is Vile one of the strongest princes? Raw power-wise, probably not. He's described as carefully neutral, and he doesn't wage open wars like Dagon or Bal. But in terms of influence, in terms of sheer reach into the mortal world through all his artifacts and bargains, in terms of his ability to manipulate situations to his advantage, Vile is definitely up there. The fact that he's created artifacts that became powerful enough to threaten him, the fact that even diminished he can still grant wishes and make deals, the fact that he can store his power in a companion and retrieve it when needed, all of this suggests Vile operates on a level that most princes don't bother with. He's playing a completely different game. Next, let's talk about Vaermina. Let's talk about nightmares. Not metaphorical ones. Actual, literal nightmares where reality breaks down and your mind shatters. That's Vaermina's whole deal. Vaermina, the Dreamweaver, the Dark Lady, is the Daedric prince of dreams and nightmares, psychological torment, and the theft of memories. Her sphere includes evil omens, corruption, and decay. And here's the terrifying part. Every single person who sleeps is potentially under her influence. Her realm is called Quagmire. And Quagmire is basically what happens when nightmares become a physical place. Reality shifts every few minutes. Lightning flashes and the entire realm morphs into a different scene, each one more frightening than the last. You could be in a dark castle, then suddenly in a den of beasts, then in a moonlit swamp, then in a casket where you see yourself being buried. From her citadel, at the center of Quagmire, Vaermina reaches out into Mundus and collects the memories of sleeping mortals. She doesn't just watch your dreams, she takes your memories and leaves you with nothing but visions of horror and despair. Most mortals visit her in their dreams constantly and never remember it. They wake up in a cold sweat with no idea they just spent hours in Quagmire. That access to the dream realm gives Vaermina a kind of power that most princes don't have. While Mehrunes Dagon has to organize invasions and Molag Bal has to send cultists, Vaermina can just wait for you to go to sleep, and you will go to sleep, eventually. Everyone does. Let's talk about the Skull of Corruption, her main artifact. This thing is horrifying. It devours dreams and memories, feeding them directly to Vaermina. Every time someone sleeps near it, the skull gets stronger. In Skyrim, it's kept at Nightcaller Temple, where priests of Vaermina use the miasma, a magical mist that keeps everyone asleep indefinitely. The longer you stay asleep under the miasma, the more your mind breaks down. People wake up as violent, insane shells of themselves. But the skull itself can do more than just collect dreams. It can blast people with corrupted dream energy, turning their own nightmares against them, and it gets stronger the more dreams it consumes. Then there's Vaermina's Torpor. This is an alchemical potion that lets you enter something called the Dream Stride. Drink it and you fall asleep and enter the dreams of someone nearby. But you're not just observing, you're physically there. You can interact with the dream, change things, and when you wake up, you might have teleported miles away from where you started. Think about that for a second. Vaermina has created a method of dream-based teleportation. You can literally walk through someone's dreams and end up somewhere else in the physical world. Now, let's talk about the omens. These are Vaermina's Daedric servants, and they're nightmare fuel. Omens dwell in dreams, and can only be permanently killed by being slain within the dream they're inhabiting. They can take various forms: Watchers, Dremora, Wisp Mothers, even disguise themselves as mortals. And Vaermina sends them to haunt people, drive them insane, ordain death among her followers, whatever she needs. Galthis, the omen of 100 prophecies, was Vaermina's mortal lover. She transformed him from a Breton into something resembling a bone colossus. In ESO's main story, she sends him to take over High King Emeric's dreams. Galthis blocks all entry to Emeric's mind, essentially trapping the king in a nightmare. It takes Azura giving the vestige a special rune to even get in there, and even then it's a fight to save Emeric. That whole situation shows you Vaermina's capabilities. She can target specific people, trap them in nightmares, and potentially kill them or drive them insane without ever physically touching them. The only reason Emeric survived was because Azura intervened. But here's where Vaermina gets really dangerous. She has connections to Magnus, the source of all magic on Nirn. Many scholars believe that through dreams, even mortals with no magical talent can slip into Quagmire and behold Vaermina's presence. That connection to Magnus suggests Vaermina's power might be more directly tied to the fundamental forces of the Orbis than we realize. In Skyrim, we see Vaermina plague the entire town of Dawnstar with magicka-draining nightmares. The whole town. Every single person is having horrible dreams that leave them exhausted. That's casual for her, affecting an entire settlement simultaneously without breaking a sweat. In ESO, Vaermina gets even more ambitious. She works with Torvasard to infiltrate the memories of Hermaeus Mora inside Apocrypha. Yes, you read that right. Vaermina invades Hermaeus Mora's realm and starts corrupting his memories. The Prince of Forbidden Knowledge, the one who supposedly knows everything, gets his own memories turned against him by the Prince of Nightmares. Granted, she doesn't succeed in that plan, but the fact that she could even attempt it, the fact that she could possess a mortal vessel, enter Apocrypha, and start warping Mora's own memories, that's a power play on a scale most princes don't even try. Vaermina also has a bitter rivalry with several other princes. She's enemies with Ebonarm, Boethiah, Peryite, and Hermaeus Mora, obviously. But she's allied with Sanguine, which makes sense. Dreams and hedonism have some overlap. Throughout the series, Vaermina's quests always involve psychological manipulation. In Daggerfall and Oblivion, you retrieve her orb from a wizard who stole it and got trapped in an eternal nightmare as punishment. In Skyrim, you have to enter someone's dream using the Dream Stride to get past a magical barrier. Power-wise, where does Vaermina sit? She's not going to be Jyggalag in a straight fight. She's not claiming to be the original Void like Nocturnal. But in terms of influence over mortals, in terms of access to everyone's minds through dreams, in terms of her ability to corrupt, manipulate, and destroy from within, Vaermina is terrifying. She doesn't need armies. She doesn't need to tear down the barriers between Oblivion and Mundus. She just needs to wait for you to sleep. And when you do, she's there, collecting your memories, twisting your dreams, leaving you with nothing but horror and despair. And you won't even remember it happening. That's a kind of power that's hard to defend against, because you can't just not sleep. Eventually, exhaustion will take you, and when it does, you're in her domain, every single night. Next, let's talk about Meridia. Alright, so we've talked about Malacath being transformed from Aedra to Daedra, but Malacath wasn't the only one. Let's talk about Meridia, the Lady of Infinite Energies, the Bright Lady, the Prince of Life and Light. Except she's not really a Daedric prince, not originally. Meridia was once Meridnunda, one of the Magna Ge. The Magna Ge were the spirits who fled Nirn's creation alongside Magnus, the architect of Mundus. When Magnus realized that creating the mortal world would drain the divine spirits of their power, he bailed. He tore a hole through oblivion back to Aetherius, creating the sun. The Magnage who followed him tore smaller holes, the stars. Meridnunda was one of the 9 coruscations, the daughters of Magnus, created from Aether in his forges. But she got cast out from Aetherius for supposedly consorting with illicit spectra, basically hanging out with Daedra when she shouldn't have been. So, Meridnunda fell. And when she fell, she didn't just disappear. She shaped the light from Magnus, from the sun itself, and created her own realm of oblivion, the colored rooms. Think about that. She took the fundamental energy of the sun and built a plane of oblivion out of it. The colored rooms are described as so intensely bright that mortal eyes can't even look at them directly. They're inhabited by Aurorans and Golden Saints, Daedric servants that are basically living light. As Meridia, she became the Daedric Prince of Life and Light, associated with the energies of all living things. And she has one very specific, very intense hatred: the undead. Meridia despises undead with a passion that goes beyond normal Daedric extremism. Vampires, liches, zombies, anything that disrupts the natural flow of life, she hates them all. And she will reward any immortal who eliminates the undead from the world. Dawnbreaker is her most famous artifact. It's an ebony longsword with a crossguard that shines with light from within. The name itself, Dawnbreaker, tells you exactly what it does. It burns away corruption and false life. When you use it against undead, it erupts with magical fire that can turn them to ash. It's so powerful against undead that even standing near undead creatures with Dawnbreaker equipped can cause them to flee. The Ring of Khajiit is another of her artifacts, though it's also sometimes attributed to Mephala. This ring makes you invisible and lets you move quickly. It was used by the legendary thief Rajhin to become the most successful burglar in Elsewhere. But Meridia's power goes way beyond artifacts. She can manipulate time itself. Ancient texts describe her ability to manipulate dreams so completely that she can affect the perception of time within nightmares, making mortals experience hours or days in moments. She stretches the dragon, Akatosh, the god of time, at one end and compresses him at the other. Let me repeat that. Meridia can mess with time, the flow of temporal events. That's a power most Daedric princes don't have. Even Hermaeus Mora, who sees all of fate, doesn't control time itself. Meridia's followers get blessings that grant immortality. Sounds great, right? Except those blessings also strip away their free will. They become essentially immortal robots who exist only to serve Meridia's will. The Aurorans, her main servants, have no sense of self. They are pure extensions of her will. And that gets to one of the really disturbing things about Meridia. For all her talk about life and light, for all the times she's helped mortals fight against undead and corruption, she fundamentally doesn't value free will. She sees it as a flaw in mortals. Her ideal world is one where everyone follows her orders without question. This came out in ESO. Meridia has a champion named Darien Gautier who helps fight against Molag Bal. Meridia promises him freedom in exchange for his service. But when Darien completes his tasks, when he's done everything she asked, Meridia doesn't free him. She traps him, uses him, and Darien realizes that all her talk about freedom was just manipulation. Meridia has a bitter rivalry with Molag Bal. Bal is the creator of vampires, the king of rape, the prince of domination. Everything Meridia hates about undeath and corruption, Bal embodies. In ESO, Meridia is one of the main forces fighting against Bal's Planameld, his attempt to drag Tamriel into Cold Harbor. She destroyed the Aelid city of Abagarlas because they received a weapon from Molag Bal, just completely annihilated it. When Meridia decides something has been corrupted by undeath or opposing forces, she doesn't hesitate to wipe it off the map. She also had a champion named Umaril the Unfeathered during the Aelid Empire. Umaril tied his existence to Meridia's realm, making him almost unkillable in a Daedric sense. It took the Nerevarine, using the power of the divines, to finally destroy him. But here's what makes Meridia interesting from a power perspective. She's a Magnage who became a Daedric prince through her own will. Malacath was transformed by force, corrupted by Boethiah. Meridia chose to take on this mantle. She shaped light itself into a realm of oblivion. She can manipulate time. She wages war against other princes like Molag Bal on cosmic scales. Her origins give her a different kind of power than the pure Daedric princes. She has connections to Aetherius, to Magnus, to the fundamental magic that powers all of reality. The Magna Ge created the stars, the holes in oblivion that let ethereal light through. Meridia is directly connected to that primal creative force. And unlike some princes who work through manipulation or corruption, Meridia can manifest direct divine power. The lights of Meridia are objects that ward entire cities from Daedric influence. Her blessings can grant actual immortality. When she fights with the fury of the sun itself. Is she good? No, absolutely not. The whole free will thing, the way she uses her champions and discards them, the rigid control she demands, that's not benevolent. But mortals often see her as one of the few good Daedric princes because she fights against undead and helps people. The reality is more complicated. Power-wise, Meridia sits in the upper tiers. She's not Jyggalag level where she threatened all of reality with perfect order, but she's definitely stronger than princes like Peryite or Sanguine. Her ability to manipulate time alone puts her in a different category, and her origins as a Magna Ge mean she has access to types of power that pure Daedric princes don't. If you're a necromancer or vampire, Meridia is probably your worst nightmare. She will find you, and she will burn you away with the light of creation itself. Next, let's talk about Namira. And now we get to the really disturbing one. The one that makes even other Daedric princes uncomfortable. The one that represents everything mortals instinctively revile. Namira, the mistress of decay, the spirit Daedra, the ancient darkness. Namira's sphere encompasses darkness, decay, repulsion, and all things that inspire visceral disgust. Spiders, slugs, insects, rot, disease, cannibalism. If it makes your skin crawl, it's probably connected to Namira. But here's where it gets really interesting. Ancient Khajiit called Namira and Urdra, that same title that Nocturnal claims, eldest and most powerful of the Daedric princes. And the Khajiit mythology about Namira is absolutely wild. According to Khajiit belief, Namira was born from Fadomai's fear of losing her children. She was literally born from darkness and chaos, born from fear itself. She was such a terrifying entity that Azura had to fight her in the underworld and kill her. But because Namira was killed in the afterlife, killed while already in a semi-divine state, she couldn't truly die. She became a ghost haunting the dreams of everyone who sleeps, clinging to existence in the collective unconscious of mortals. If that's true, if Namira really is the fear ghost of a dead primordial force, that's absolutely insane. It would mean she's not even truly alive in the way other Daedric princes are alive. She's something that refuses to stop existing even after being destroyed. Hermaeus Mora is also called Daedra and described as elder than Ada, older than the original spirits. So you got Nocturnal claiming to be the original void, Namira being called the eldest spirit, and Hermaeus Mora being older than the Itada themselves. The exact nature of which prince is actually oldest is unclear, but the fact that all three make that claim suggests they're all operating on a different level than the others. Namira's realm is called the Scuttling Void, and the name alone should tell you everything you need to know. It's not described in detail in the lore, probably because anyone who goes there doesn't come back sane enough to describe it. But we know it's associated with darkness, dampness, vermin, and decay. Her servants include the Drom Athra. These are Khajiit who became corrupted in life and had their souls claimed by Namira, the Khajiit name for her. Upon death, they become dark spirits with completely black fur crossed by glowing blue lightning. Their eyes glow pale blue. They pour out from the dark behind the world, dancing to the pounding of the dark heart, the void's heartbeat. The dark heart itself is this massive beating thing at the center of the scuttling void. The beat of the dark heart is corruption made audible, kite who dance to its rhythm in life become Drom Athra in death. It's like Namira has weaponized music and rhythm itself as a tool of corruption. Then there's the Ring of Namira. This artifact grants vampiric abilities. Feeding on corpses restores your health and stamina. In Oblivion, the quest for it involves helping a community of cannibals. In Skyrim, she wants you to help a group of cannibals by eating a priest of Archai in front of them. And that connects to one of Namira's big things, cannibalism. The Bosmer have the Green Pact. They can't harm plants in Valenwood, so they have to eat meat. All meat. Including other Bosmer when they win battles. That practice is connected to Y'ffre, but Namira has heavy influence over it too. In many parts of Tamriel, especially among beggars and outcasts, Namira is worshipped as the patron of those society rejects. The diseased, the disfigured, the homeless, they're all under Namira's protection, and she gives them power through their very repulsiveness. The Forgotten are a cult devoted to Namira. They live underground, embrace filth and disease, and see beauty as a sin. They blind themselves, cover themselves in filth, and believe that only through embracing absolute repulsiveness can they find truth, and Namira blesses them. She makes them stronger in their wretchedness. Let's talk about her power level. Unlike princes who need to plan invasions or manipulate mortals into cults, Namira is just there. She's in every dark corner, every rotting thing, every moment of visceral disgust. You can't escape her because decay is inevitable. Everything rots eventually. Her influence is passive but absolute. Mehrunes Dagon has to work to destroy things. Molag Bal has to actively dominate people. Namira just waits. Given enough time, everything decays. Everything becomes part of her sphere. And the fear aspect, if the Khajiit are right and she really is born from fear itself, that's a type of power that transcends normal Daedric capabilities. Fear is one of the most primal emotions. It exists in every mortal. Every moment of revulsion, every nightmare, every time you recoil from something disgusting, that's Namira's influence. The fact that she might have been killed and came back as something that can't die is also terrifying. If she's essentially the ghost of a dead primordial force that refuses to stay gone, what does that make her? How do you fight something that's already dead but won't stop existing? Ancient Khajiit texts call her the Great Darkness, the void that existed before creation. Some sources suggest she might be connected to Sithis itself, the primordial chaos before anything existed. Some scholars speculate that Namira might be connected to Sithis, the primordial void that predates reality itself. The Dark Brotherhood worships Sithis as the Dread Father, and the Night Mother serves Sithis. If there's any connection between Namira and that primordial void, it would explain her claim to being among the oldest spirits, but this is speculation based on thematic similarities rather than confirmed lore. Now, we have to be careful here. The lore contradicts itself constantly. Different cultures have different interpretations. The Khajiit see Namira as the Great Darkness. The Dunmer include her in their House of Troubles, treating her as just another dangerous Daedra to avoid. The Empire sees her as the Spirit Daedra, patron of beggars and the diseased. But across all these interpretations, one thing is consistent. Namira is ancient, older than most, and her power isn't flashy, it's inevitable. She doesn't need to invade Tamriel because rot and decay are already everywhere. Her rivalries are interesting too. She's associated with Peryite to some degree. Both deal with disease. But Peryite is about natural order and pestilence as a form of balance. Namira is about decay as an end state, as the ultimate destination of all things. She also connects to Nocturnal through darkness, but their darkness is different. Nocturnal's darkness is the void, the absence, the shadow. Namira's darkness is the writhing, living darkness full of insects and rot and things that move in the deep places. Throughout the games, Namira's quests always involve pushing you to do something repulsive. In Oblivion, you join cannibals. In Skyrim, you eat a priest. She doesn't offer power or knowledge or wishes. She offers the ability to embrace what society rejects, to find strength in repulsiveness itself. And here's the thing. For the outcasts, the diseased, the ones society wants to forget, Namira is salvation. She doesn't reject them, she embraces them. She makes their suffering into power. In that sense, she offers something real to people who have nothing else. Is she evil? By most moral standards, yes. Cannibalism, disease, decay, corruption, these aren't good things. But Namira doesn't care about moral concepts of good and evil. She just is. She's the inevitable end of all things, the darkness that waits for everything to fall apart. Power-wise, Namira sits in this weird space where her direct capabilities seem limited. She doesn't have armies, doesn't launch invasions, doesn't manipulate mortals on huge scales. But her fundamental nature gives her a kind of power that's impossible to fight. You can't beat decay, you can't permanently defeat rot. It's always there, always waiting, always inevitable. If the claims about her being Urdra are true, if she really is one of the oldest spirits, if she really is connected to Sithis and the primordial void, then Namira might actually be one of the most powerful princes. Not in terms of what she does, but in terms of what she is. And that's terrifying in its own way. Because you can fight an invasion, you can resist manipulation, but how do you fight inevitability? Next, let's talk about Peryite. Alright, so after talking about ancient primordial darkness, let's talk about the prince that everyone dismisses. The one that every source calls the weakest, Daedric prince, Peryite. Peryite, the taskmaster, the lord of pestilence, the blighted lord. He appears as a dragon. Specifically, he's described as having a dragon's body, the only Daedric prince who consistently takes this form. And that's interesting, because dragons in Elder Scrolls are fragments of Akatosh, the god of time. The fact that Peryite appears as a dragon has led to a lot of speculation about his true nature. Peryite's sphere is pestilence, natural order, and tasks. He's the keeper of the lowest orders of oblivion. And that word, lowest, is where things get interesting. See, the lore consistently describes Peryite as the weakest of the Daedric princes, but it also describes him as responsible for maintaining the natural order of oblivion. He oversees the ordering of the lower planes, makes sure everything functions properly, and keeps the bureaucracy of the Daedric realms running. Think about that for a second. If Peryite is responsible for the natural order of all the lower planes of oblivion, if he's the one making sure reality doesn't collapse into chaos, does that really sound like the weakest prince to you? Let's talk about his realm, the pits. It's described as an infinite maze of caves, passages, and pits filled with poisonous vapors and noxious fumes. The air itself is toxic. His servants are diseased and plagued creatures. Sounds like a nightmare, but the pits serve a purpose. They're not random. Every passage, every pit, every diseased creature has a function in Peryite's grand scheme of maintaining order. It's like the entire realm is a massive functioning organism where every part has a role. Peryite's artifact is the Spellbreaker. It's a Dwemer tower shield that creates a magical ward, absorbing spell damage. And here's the thing. This is one of the most powerful defensive artifacts in all of Elder Scrolls. It doesn't just reduce magic damage, it completely absorbs it up to a certain threshold. For a shield created by the supposedly weakest prince, that's pretty incredible. Now, let's talk about what Peryite actually does. He maintains natural order. He sends plagues and pestilence to cull populations when they grow too large. He ensures that the fabric of oblivion doesn't tear itself apart from all the chaos the other princes cause. In Oblivion, Peryite's quest involves souls that got stuck between planes during a ritual. They're just floating in limbo, trapped between Mundus and Oblivion. Peryite needs you to kill them so their souls can return to the proper natural order. He's literally maintaining the infrastructure of reality. In Skyrim, a group of monks tried to breathe in his vapors to achieve a vision. They ended up trapped in a comatose state, their souls stuck in Peryite's realm. You have to enter his realm and kill them there to free them. Again, it's about maintaining order. These souls are stuck where they shouldn't be, and it's causing problems. And here's where it gets really interesting. Peryite doesn't operate like other princes. He doesn't want conquest, he doesn't want worship. He doesn't make elaborate deals or manipulate mortals into complicated schemes. He just maintains things. When populations grow too large and strain resources, Peryite sends disease to reduce numbers and restore balance. When magical experiments go wrong and trap souls between planes, Peryite fixes it. When the natural order is disrupted, Peryite is the one who restores it. That's not weakness. That's a completely different kind of power. Think about the other princes. Mehrunes Dagon destroys things. Molag Bal dominates them. Clavicus Vile tricks them. Vaermina corrupts them. But Peryite keeps the entire structure of reality running. He's the maintenance worker of existence. The fact that he appears as a dragon is also significant. Dragons are aspects of Akatosh, who maintains the flow of time itself. If Peryite has taken a dragon form, there might be a deeper connection there. Some scholars speculate that Peryite might actually be a reflection or aspect of Akatosh that split off and became Daedric. That would explain a lot. It would explain why he's responsible for maintaining order when most Daedric princes represent chaos. It would explain his dragon form. It would explain why he's described as weak but also indispensable. If Peryite really is some kind of reflection of the god of time, then calling him the weakest prince is like calling a maintenance worker weak because they don't fight. He's not weak, he's just doing a completely different job than the others. Let's talk about his relationship with other princes. Peryite is associated with Namira through disease, but their approaches are completely different. Namira's diseases are about decay and repulsion. Peryite's diseases are about balance and culling. Namira's rot is an end state. Peryite's pestilence is a tool for maintaining equilibrium. He also has connections to Hermaeus Mora through the concept of natural order, but again, different approaches. Mora hoards all knowledge and secrets. Peryite ensures everything functions as it should. Throughout the series, Peryite's followers are always described as the most devoted of any Daedric cult. His afflicted worshippers willingly contract his diseases because they see them as blessings. In Skyrim, the afflicted see their plague as a beautiful gift that brings them closer to Peryite. They attack anyone who tries to cure them, and Peryite blesses them in return. The afflicted have increased disease resistance, can spread Peryite's plague with their attacks, and have enhanced stamina. For embracing his natural order, he makes them stronger. Now here's the really wild thing. If Peryite is responsible for maintaining the natural order of the lower planes of oblivion, that means every single Daedric realm, all the infinite planes of every prince, are under his jurisdiction to some degree. He's not ruling them, he's not controlling them, but he's making sure they don't collapse or conflict in ways that would tear reality apart. Imagine being the prince who has to make sure Mehrunes Dagon's realm of destruction doesn't spill over into Nocturnal's realm of shadow. Imagine coordinating the metaphysical boundaries between Molag Bal's cold harbor and Sheogorath's shivering isles. That's not a job for a weak prince. That's a job that requires understanding reality on a level most princes don't operate on. And here's the kicker. The other princes tolerate this. They let Peryite maintain order because they need him to. Even Jyggalag, the prince of perfect order, had his own realm and his own way of doing things. But Peryite oversees the structure that all their realms exist within. Is Peryite the most powerful prince? In terms of direct combat, probably not. He's never shown throwing around reality warping power like some of the others. He doesn't wage wars or launch invasions. But in terms of importance to the continued existence of Oblivion itself, in terms of the scope of his responsibilities, Peryite might actually be one of the most crucial princes. The weakest prince is the one keeping everything from falling apart. That's a pretty good trick when you think about it. Let's start with Peryite. Right off the bat, here's the weird thing about him. He's considered the weakest of the Daedric princes, but at the same time, he's probably affected more mortal lives than almost any other prince in history. Think about that for a second. Every plague, every pandemic, every disease that swept through Tamriel, that's Peryite's work. Now, appearance-wise, Peryite shows up looking like a dragon. Green, four-legged, proper dragon. And here's where it gets interesting. His followers are supposed to see this resemblance to Akatosh as some kind of joke, some primordial jest, as the texts put it. There's this whole theory that maybe Peryite is mocking Akatosh, or maybe there's something deeper about the connection between time and natural order. Either way, the dragon form is his thing. But let's talk about what he actually does. Peryite's sphere covers pestilence, yeah, but here's what people miss. He's the taskmaster. He's in charge of ordering the lower planes of oblivion. He maintains the hierarchy among lesser Daedra. Think of him as the middle manager of oblivion, making sure everything runs properly, making sure the natural order is maintained. And that's a completely different type of order than Jyggalag's perfect mathematical order. Peryite's order is organic. It's the order of nature, of things decaying and being reborn, of populations being culled so the strong survive. His realm is called the Pits, and here's what makes it fascinating. We barely know anything about it. Even mages who can travel to other planes of oblivion can't get into the Pits. It's described as being impossible to enter. When his followers tried to contact him in oblivion, their souls got stuck in Peryite's own realm, the Pits. Now, whether that's actually what the Pits look like, or whether their souls just ended up in the wrong place because they messed up the ritual, nobody knows. Some sources describe parts of it as rocky cave systems filled with green poisonous fog and floating embers. Other parts apparently resemble volcanic islands in lava seas. It's deliberately mysterious. Let's go through his appearances in the games, because this is where you see how the character has developed. Back in Daggerfall, he was pretty straightforward. You summon him, he gives you a quest, standard Daedric prince stuff. In Oblivion, his quest got interesting. His followers tried to commune with him through some ritual, and it went sideways. Their souls got trapped, and Peryite asks you, the hero of Kuwatch, to rescue them. What's notable here is that Peryite is actually concerned about his followers. He's not angry at them for failing, he just wants them back. He's described as affable, friendly even, despite having one of the worst reputations among mortals. Skyrim's quest is where things get darker. There's this group called the Afflicted, these Bretons, who Peryite blessed with a plague. They've got bright red skin, they can vomit poison at enemies, and they're spreading disease across the Reach. Their leader is a bossmer named Orkindor. And here's the thing, he was supposed to be Peryite's champion, his overseer, but he forgot his duty, he's gone rogue. So Peryite tasks you with killing him. The whole quest takes place in Betardams, this deep Dwemer ruin filled with afflicted and automatons. When you get to Peryite's shrine to start the quest, you meet Kesh the Clean, this Khajiit who serves Peryite. You need to bring him specific ingredients, a silver ingot, deathbell flower, vampire dust, and a flawless ruby. He mixes them in this Dwemer incense burner, you inhale the fumes, and suddenly the world goes surreal. Everything's painted in these deeply saturated colors. Ghostly skeevers appear, and Peryite talks to you. It's this weird, almost hallucinogenic experience. The reward for his quests is always Spellbreaker. It's a dwarven tower shield, super ancient, probably one of the oldest artifacts in Tamriel. Some say it was forged by Peryite, others say it was made for King Grarkan and just became associated with Peryite later. Either way, it reflects spells. In Skyrim, it reflects up to 50 magicka worth of spells, which makes it one of the best shields in the game if you're fighting mages. Here's what's wild about Peryite's power level. On paper, he's weak. Direct combat, he's the weakest prince. Raw magical power, bottom tier. But indirect influence, the guy is a monster. Every disease, every plague, that's population control on a massive scale. That's civilization's falling. In the Second Era, there's this account from a healer named Rindral Tirano in the city of Tyr. The city got hit with disaster after disaster, strange cold nights in summer, floods, then this miasma that brought every disease you can imagine. The grippe, ague, consumptive coughs, this thing called fiddler's quinsy, flying heart ticks, the healers couldn't keep up. Surrounding cities refused to help because they were scared the diseases would spread to them. So Rindrel summoned Peryite directly. The prince appeared as a ghostly skeever and made a deal. For a year and a day, Tyr would be free of illness. But Rindrel paid the price. His limbs weakened, his skin turned scaly and lizard-like in places. Boils grew on him, food lost all taste, breathing and sleeping became difficult. The city was saved, but Rindrel's life became a living nightmare. That's the thing about Peryite. He works on a scale that's hard to comprehend. He's not fleshy like Mehrunes Dagon or controlling like Molag Bal, but his fear touches every single living thing. Disease is inescapable, and he doesn't see it as evil. To him, it's balance. It's pruning the weak, strengthening the herd, maintaining the natural order. He's got followers called plague concoctors, who experiment with creating new diseases, engineering them to be incurable and to show symptoms slowly so they spread further. They offer samples to Peryite, and apparently he's picky. The strains need to be similar. He hates heterogeny, mixing different types. In Elder Scrolls Online, Peryite plays this really interesting role. When Hermaeus Mora decided Ithelia was too dangerous and wanted to erase her from existence, most princes agreed, but Peryite and Vaermina, they refused. They sided against Mora, said no, we're not doing this. Later, they team up with this Dramora named Torvesard to invade Apocrypha and recover their stolen memories of Ithelia. That's surprisingly brave for the weakest prince. He's standing up to Hermaeus Mora, one of the most powerful princes. There's this line from one analysis that really captures Peryite. He's predictable. His powers are thematic and direct, spreading disease, enforcing order in the lower planes, embodying decay. There's no hidden ace up his sleeve, no surprise reversal. What you see is what you get. But that predictability doesn't make him less dangerous, it makes him inevitable. Now, Sanguine. If Peryite is the middle manager maintaining order, Sanguine is the co-worker who shows up to the office party and makes things interesting. He's the Daedric prince of debauchery, revelry, hedonism. His fear covers everything in excess: lust, sloth, gluttony, the darker indulgences of mortal nature. And honestly, he's probably the most fun Daedric prince to interact with in the games. Physically, Sanguine is depicted as this portly but muscular, crimson-skinned figure with a demonic head, horns, tusks, the whole package. He's usually holding a bottle, or, in some depictions, has someone under his thumb. In Daggerfall, he looked different, more like a red-skinned elf or goblin with glowing green eyes, wearing a blue robe, standing with his foot on a skull while holding this golden model of a woman. But by Oblivion and Skyrim, the Crimson Demon look became standard. His realm is called the Myriad Realms of Revelry. Not one realm, but thousands. Maybe over 100,000 pocket realms and sub-realms, all dedicated to pleasure. And here's what's cool. They reshape themselves based on who visits them. They're customized to meet the desires of whoever's there. Sanguine exerts minimal control over them, because that's exactly how he prefers it. The whole point is freedom. Indulgence, no constraints. The waters in these realms supposedly show visions of other failed, princeless realms of Oblivion colliding with each other. It's trippy stuff. Sanguine's artifact is the Sanguine Rose. It's shaped like a twisted, thorny black rose, and when you use it, it summons a random Daedra to fight for you. The catch? The Daedra is uncontrollable. It attacks everything except you, but you can't command it. In older lore, each time you use the rose, it would wilt a little, petals falling off until it lost its power. Then a new rose would bloom somewhere in Oblivion, and Sanguine would pluck it to give to another champion. In Oblivion and Skyrim, they simplified it. It's just a staff that needs recharging. In Oblivion, the summoned Daedra lasted 20 seconds. In Skyrim, they bumped it up to 60 seconds minimum, which makes it way more useful. Let's walk through his quests, because they perfectly capture his personality. In Daggerfall, his quest is the most straightforward. He sends you to kill a monk who murdered a bunch of his acolytes, burned them to death. So you go to this abandoned temple and take the monk out. The quest is called On the 16th of Sun's Dusk, which lines up with Heart's Day, this holiday in Tamriel. Makes sense for the Prince of Passion and Pleasure. Oblivion is where Sanguine's quest becomes legendary. You need to be level 8 and bring Cyrodiilic brandy to his shrine. The shrine itself doesn't follow the normal naming pattern. It's just Shrine of Sanguine, not Sanguine's shrine, like you'd expect. Once you summon him, he tells you about this dinner party being hosted by Countess Alessia Caro in Leyawiin. She's uptight, snobbish, and Sanguine thinks her parties are boring as hell. So he gives you a spell called Stark Reality and tells you to crash the party and cast it on everyone there. What does the spell do? It strips everyone naked. Every single person at the party, including you, complete chaos erupts. Guards start chasing you, and you have to escape the castle. If you get caught, you can either do jail time or resist and run. Either way, once you complete it, Sanguine is thrilled. He rewards you with the Sanguine Rose and gives back all your stuff. But Skyrim is where Sanguine truly shines. This is A Night to Remember quest, and if you haven't done it, it's genuinely one of the best quests in the game. You walk into a random tavern, could be any tavern in Skyrim, and there's this guy named Sam Gavin, friendly-looking Breton, offers you a drinking contest with his special brew. If you accept, the game cuts to black, and then you wake up the next morning in the Temple of Dibella in Markarth, which is possibly hours away from where you started, and you have no memory of what happened. Then you start piecing it together. You trash the temple, the priestess tells you that you've been desecrating the place. Then you find out you stole a goat from a farmer in Rorikstead and sold it to a giant. You have to go talk to the giant, convince him to give back the goat, and return it. Then you discover that you went to Whiterun, got engaged to a Hagraven named Moira. You proposed with a wedding ring you stole from someone named Isolda. So now you have to track down Isolda, get the ring back, then go find Moira, who's living in Witchmisgrove and is very much still expecting to marry you, and break off the engagement. After all this, people point you toward Morvunskar, this fort filled with hostile mages. You fight through them, and in the middle of the fort, there's a portal to the Misty Grove. You go through, and there's Sam, sitting at this long dinner table with a bunch of guests, having a party. When you confront him, he reveals himself. The transformation is instant. Sam Gavin becomes Sanguine, full Daedric Prince appearance. He tells you the whole thing was for his amusement. The items you were supposedly collecting to repair his staff? He didn't need them. He just wanted to see you run around Skyrim, causing mayhem. And he loved every second of it. He gives you the Sanguine Rose, says something about how you're going places, and maybe a little influence from your old uncle Sanguine could help, then teleports you back to the tavern. The quest is brilliant because it captures exactly who Sanguine is. He's not evil in the way Molag Bal is evil. He's not trying to conquer or corrupt. He just wants to have a good time. And he wants you to have a good time too, even if you can't remember it afterward. There's this line in the quest where you ask him why he chose you, and he says, "Let's be honest here, I don't always think my decisions through." Sanguine's personality across all his appearances is remarkably consistent. He's charming, he's friendly, he's the life of the party. In terms of raw power, he's not that strong compared to other princes. His magic is oriented toward chaos and illusion, not destruction. He can summon Daedra, shapeshift, transport people between realms, but he's not going to tear open the sky like Mehrunes Dagon, or enslave your soul like Molag Bal. What he excels at is manipulation and entertainment. He's a trickster figure, similar to Dionysus from Greek mythology, which is clearly what he's based on. God of wine and revelry, encourages excess, but with an underlying danger because excess can destroy you. Lore-wise, Sanguine has connections to other princes. He's allied with Vaermina, which makes sense. Both deal with altered states of consciousness, dreams, and intoxication. He's enemies with Ebonarm, the House of Dibella, and the Benevolence of Mara. Basically all the gods associated with honor, beauty, and righteous love. Because Sanguine's love is the opposite of righteous. It's passionate, it's perverse, It's unnatural sexual relations, as the text delightfully put it. One thing that's interesting is how rarely Sanguine appears compared to other princes. He's been in Daggerfall, Oblivion, and Skyrim, but he was completely absent from Morrowind. The Dunmer apparently don't have a particular relationship with him. He's just not part of their religious framework. Whether he shows up in Elder Scrolls 6 remains to be seen. But given how popular the Skyrim quest is, I'd be shocked if they don't bring him back. There's also this weird bug in Skyrim, where after you complete his quest, Sanguine can randomly appear in places like Morvunskar or Ilinalta's Deep, just fighting enemies. Since he's an essential character, he can die, so he always wins. He'll just massacre everyone. If you try to talk to him, he gives generic dialogue. If you're a werewolf or vampire lord, he'll actually attack you, but you can't kill him. It's this bizarre remnant of the quest that turned into accidental lore. The artifacts associated with Sanguine beyond the rose include these things called the threads of the web spinner, 27 pieces of enchanted clothing and jewelry. The story goes that Mephala wanted to reward her followers in the Molag Bal, so she turned to Sanguine to create them. Each piece enhances a specific skill. There's also the Rod of Revels, which can turn any location into part of the myriad realms of revelry. It was used at something called Sanguine's Fair until it got broken by this figure called the Lady of Riot. Then there's the Death Dealer's Fete, a cursed signet ring that lets you hear revelry in the dead of night, laughter, and anguished screams mixed together. It has an enchantment called Escalating Fete that makes you stronger the longer you're in combat, supposedly to prevent exhaustion during parties or fighting or other rigorous activities. In terms of power ranking, Sanguine sits somewhere in the middle to lower end. He's more powerful than Peryite in direct confrontation, but less powerful than the heavy hitters like Hermaeus Mora or Mehrunes Dagon. His strength is in his realm control and his ability to manipulate mortals through temptation. He's not trying to conquer Nirn or reshape reality. He's just trying to have a good time and maybe corrupt a few souls along the way. Now we get to Ithelia, and honestly, this is where things get absolutely wild, because Ithelia was only introduced in 2024 with the Gold Road chapter of Elder Scrolls Online. She's the 18th Daedric prince, and her story is legitimately one of the most ambitious pieces of lore Bethesda has ever written. Ithelia is known by a lot of names: the Prince of Paths, the Mistress of the Untraveled Road, the Unseen, the Fate Changer, the Dark Reflection, the Last Tomorrow, the Unweaver. She who saw and wept. Every title points to the same terrifying ability: she can alter fate itself. She can reach into something called the Many Paths, which are alternate realities, parallel timelines, different versions of events, and she can pull things from those realities into the main one. Or push things out. She can rewrite history, change destiny, make reality, accommodate whatever she decides to do. And that scared the other Daedric princes so much that they erased her from existence. Here's how it went down. During the Merethic era, Ithelia ruled over a realm called Miramor. It was a desert wasteland filled with giant skeletons, surrounded by this auroral sky. When she's active and using her power, the realm fills with shattered mirrors and crystalline structures, and the sky fractures with visible cracks in reality. The Aelids, the first elves, worshipped her, specifically the Aelids of Esondul, Elenglin, and Miskarkant in Cyrodiil. But Hermaeus Mora looked at what Ithelia was doing and saw the end of everything. Her manipulations of fate were causing the Many Paths to splinter. Reality itself was fracturing under the strain of her power, so Mora convinced most of the other Daedric princes to help him. Azura, Boethiah, and Mephala agreed. They created 3 artifacts specifically to bind her. Azura made the Lamp of Clarity. It contained a spark of Azura herself and could reveal Ithelia's location across the Many Paths, because one of Ithelia's powers was the ability to avoid the gaze of other princes. Boethiah created Abolisher, a blade that could open and close paths between realities, and they used the Skein of Secrets, which could track someone across the threads of fate. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all the princes agreed. Vaermina and Peryite refused to help. They said no, we're not doing this. But Mora and his allies did it anyway. They captured Ithelia, stripped her of her power, and imprisoned her in the deepest, most ancient part of Apocrypha. Then Mora did something unprecedented. He erased all memory of her from every being in existence. Mortals forgot her. The other Daedric princes forgot her. Reality itself forgot she existed. Mora couldn't erase his own memory, so he locked his memories in 3 primordial glyphics to keep them safe. But Ithelia had a contingency plan. She had a servant, a Dremora named Torvesard, and she protected just enough of his memory so that he could find her again one day. And that's exactly what happens in ESO. Torvesard starts having dreams, which is impossible for Dremora. They don't dream. He knows something is wrong, knows Hermaeus Mora took something from him. So he teams up with Peryite and Vaermina, the 2 princes who refused to help erase Ithelia in the first place, and they invade Apocrypha. They recovered their memories. They remembered there was another prince, and the moment they remember her, Ithelia breaks free. See, that's her power. The act of being remembered, of existing in someone's mind, gave her enough strength to shatter her prison. By the time Torvesard reaches her cell, it's empty, the walls are broken, and she's gone. She wakes up with no memory of who she is, wandering through West Weald in Cyrodiil. But strange things follow her. The threads of fate tangle wherever she goes. Echoes from other realities bleed through. A jungle suddenly grows overnight, the Dawnwood, this magical rainforest that appears out of nowhere because Ithelia's presence is pulling pieces of alternate timelines into the current one. You, playing as the Vestige in ESO, work with Laramil, the Wise, and Hermaeus Mora to track her down. You find her at Elenglin, this ruined Eyelid shrine. She's confused, disoriented. She doesn't understand what she is or what she's doing. You use the Echonir, this artifact that shows memories, and she starts piecing together her past. She remembers being betrayed, being imprisoned, her followers being scattered. Meanwhile, a cult called the Recollection, led by this wood elf king named Nantarion, is trying to restore her to full power. They believe she's their salvation. Nantarion wants to use her power to transform the Weald into a paradise, to bring back the glory of the Eyelids. He gets his hands on the Staff of Many Paths, one of her artifacts, and things spiral out of control fast. Eventually, Ithelia reaches Fargrave. And here's the reveal. Fargrave, this supposedly neutral hub city that's been in ESO for years, used to be part of Miramor. It's a fragment of her realm that got forgotten along with her. The city starts transforming, crystals growing from every surface, responding to the return of its prince. In Fargrave, there's something called the Loom of the Untraveled Road. It's not really a device, it's more like a place, a pocket dimension, a series of portals within portals that lead to the many paths. With the Loom, Ithelia can reshape fate on a massive scale. She can access alternate histories and weave them into reality. She could give every single being their own desired history, break the shackles of fate entirely. And that's exactly what she tries to do. She thinks she's helping. In her mind, she's liberating everyone from the constraints of destiny, giving them absolute freedom. But what actually happens is catastrophic. You destroy the Loom before she can activate it fully, but the destruction floods her with power from the many paths. The untold amounts of energy overwhelm her, and she transforms into something called the Last Tomorrow. This is the threat Hermaeus Mora foresaw. In this form, she's unraveling the threads of fate, causing rips in reality that multiply and grow. If she's not stopped, the tears will erase all of existence. She attacks Hermaeus Mora directly, draining his power, trying to destroy him and take over Apocrypha to rebuild Miramor on its ruins. The player has to use a shard from one of her first Daedra creations, the primordial Shattered Titan, to create an artifact that can reach her. You show her what she's become, what her power is actually doing. And here's the tragic part. She understands. She sees the destruction, sees that even imprisoned, even powerless, Her abilities will eventually return and cause the same catastrophe. So she makes a choice. She renounces her power and her position as a Daedric prince. She restores the power she stole from Mora. Then she works with him to open a pathway to a different reality, one where magic doesn't exist. A reality where Daedra can exist, where she can never use her powers again. She walks through, and you use Abolisher to seal the path behind her. She's not destroyed, she's exiled to a place where she's effectively mortal, powerless, trapped forever. And then Hermaeus Mora erases her from existence again. All memory of Ithelia is removed from every mind across reality. The vestige keeps their memories, and Mora keeps his, but everyone else forgets. Mehrunes remains as a shattered ruin, but nobody remembers it was her realm. The recollection cult gets recontextualized in everyone's memories as just a scheme by Torvasard with Vaermina and Peryite. Now, let's talk about what makes Ithelia so powerful. Her abilities are reality warping on a scale we've never seen before. She doesn't just manipulate fate the way Hermaeus Mora records it or Azura predicts it, she changes it. She can pull elements from parallel realities into the current one. She can banish beings to the many paths, trapping them between worlds. Where she walks, the threads of fate converge and tangle, causing echoes from other realities and opening gateways to parallel worlds. Her very presence destabilizes reality. The many paths themselves are described like a spiderweb within a diamond, or a broken mirror where each shard is its own reality, or a halo of possibilities surrounding the main timeline. Within the many paths, anything is possible. There are realities where magic doesn't exist. Realities that are dark reflections of the world, empty and timeless. Realities where the Daedric princes never existed, or where different choices led to completely different outcomes. Ithelia can access all of it. Her followers, the Scions, share some of this power. They can open portals to the many paths, banish enemies there, pull through echoes and aspects of other realities. The Shardborn, her Dremora, are these crystalline beings wrapped in mirrors and glass. When Ithelia is active, her presence causes Daedric incursions across entire regions. The West Weald gets flooded with rifts and portals. The loom of the untraveled road is described as a Daedric apparatus of unimaginable power. Places that were part of Mehrunes are connected to it. Artifacts used near it have their power drained as the loom gains strength. When Ithelia tries to use it, she draws immense amounts of power from the many paths, so much that it transforms her into the last tomorrow. That transformation is what Mora feared all along. In terms of raw power, Ithelia might be the single most powerful Daedric prince we've ever encountered. She's not the strongest in combat, that's probably Mehrunes Dagon or maybe Molag Bal. She's not the smartest, that's Hermaeus Mora. But in terms of sheer reality-altering ability, nobody else comes close. Jyggalag could impose perfect order, but he couldn't rewrite what had already happened. Hermaeus Mora knows everything, but he can't change the past. Ithelia can do both. She can reach into the past, into alternate versions of the past, and make them real. That's terrifying. But here's the thing, she's limited by her control. When she's in control, when she's calm and focused, she's unstoppable. But when her emotions take over, when the power overwhelms her, she becomes the last tomorrow, an unthinking force of destruction. That's her weakness. The power is too much for even a Daedric prince to handle. The introduction of Ithelia is significant because it expands the metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls universe. Before her, we knew alternate timelines existed. Dragon breaks, the warp in the west, that kind of thing. But Ithelia makes it explicit that there are countless realities, that the many paths are a real, tangible thing that can be accessed and manipulated. It opens up possibilities for future games and storylines. There's also a theory floating around that connects Ithelia to the concept of prisoners, the protagonists of the Elder Scrolls games. You always start as a prisoner, right? In Daggerfall, you're a prisoner in a dungeon. In Morrowind, you're a prisoner being transported to Vvardenfell. In Oblivion, you're in the Imperial prison. In Skyrim, you're being taken to execution. In Iso, you're imprisoned in Cold Harbor. Some sources suggest that prisoners are beings who exist outside normal fate, whose actions can change destiny. And Ithelia, the fate changer, might be connected to that somehow. Maybe the reason prisoners can alter fate is because of lingering echoes of her power, fragments of Mehrunes' influence that persist even after she was erased. It's unconfirmed, but it's a cool idea. Another interesting detail, there's this place called Deadlight, an abandoned realm of oblivion described as devoid of life and energy. Some players think that's where Ithelia was actually sent. The real Mora in She Opened might not be our real world, but Deadlight. There are references to Mehrunes Dagon chasing a forgotten prince there and destroying the realm. That could be Ithelia. And if that's true, if she's trapped there with the memory of everything that was done to her, the erasure, the imprisonment, the exile, that's a setup for her to return in a future game, and she would be pissed. The Gold Road expansion itself is set in West Weald, which is cool for lore reasons. Cyrodiil in Oblivion is all forests and plains, but lore texts suggest it used to be a jungle before Tiber Septim changed it. Gold Road solves that discrepancy by putting the jungle in a specific region tied to Ithelia. The Dawnwood is her influence, making alternate realities bleed through. It's a jungle that shouldn't exist, a piece of a different timeline made real. Ithelia's reception among players has been mixed. Some people love the addition of a new prince with such a unique and powerful sphere. Others think it messes with established lore, that adding a prince who was erased from memory feels like a retcon. But here's the thing. The Elder Scrolls has always played with unreliable narrators and fluid history. Dragon breaks are literally moments when multiple contradictory timelines exist simultaneously and then collapse back into one confused history. Ithelia fits into that perfectly. Her existence explains why there might be gaps in knowledge, why certain things feel forgotten or inconsistent. Plus, the idea of a prince so dangerous that the others teamed up to erase her. That's compelling. The Daedric princes usually operate independently, pursuing their own spheres, occasionally clashing but never really organizing. The fact that Mora could convince Azura, Boethiah, and Mephala to help him shows how serious the threat was. And the fact that Peryite and Vaermina refused, that they were willing to stand against the majority, adds layers to their characters too. Peryite, the weakest prince, standing up to Hermaeus Mora because he doesn't think erasing someone from existence is right. That's interesting. Looking at Ithelia's artifacts, there's really only one, the Staff of Many Paths. It's wielded by Torvesard and later King Nantarion, and it's filled with her power. It lets the user manipulate threads of fate, open portals, channel the energy of the many paths. When Nantarion uses it at the Great Well of Miskarkand, pulling on Ithelia's power with her standing nearby doing the same, reality starts coming apart. After the questline, the staff and the 3 Daedric artifacts used to bind her, abolish her, the Lamp of Clarity, and the Skein of Secrets all lose their Daedric power. They become mundane objects. That's the cost of sealing away the tears in reality she created. The visual design of Mirrormoor and the Shardborn is really distinct too. Everything is mirrors and crystals and fractured light. The Shardborn look like angels made of glass. These beautiful but alien Daedra that don't fit the usual Oblivion aesthetic of either fire and darkness or eerie otherworldly beauty. They're sharp, reflective, almost like they're beings made of possibility itself, which fits Ithelia's theme perfectly. In Elder Scrolls 6, assuming it eventually comes out, I'd be really curious to see if Ithelia shows up again. The setup is there, she's not dead, just imprisoned in a reality without magic. But Dragon Breaks have shown us that the Elder Scrolls universe doesn't play by normal rules. If she finds a way back, if someone remembers her, she could return. And given that she renounced her power willingly and then got memory wiped anyway, she'd have every reason to be furious. An angry reality warper who's been betrayed twice would be an incredible antagonist. And now for the one you have all been waiting for, who's actually the strongest. It's definitely Jyggalag. Because he was so powerful, literally all the Daedric princes teamed up on him. That has never happened before in the entire history of the Orbis. Not for Mehrunes Dagon's invasions, not for Molag Bal's Planameld, not for Ithelia's reality warping, not for anything else, ever. Daedric princes don't cooperate. They're fundamentally opposed to each other by nature. Their spheres conflict. They hate each other. They compete. They've been playing power games against each other since before time was a thing. But Jyggalag scared them so badly that ancient enemies became allies. Princes who represent complete opposite concepts, order and chaos, light and darkness, domination and rebellion, they all agreed on one thing. Jyggalag had to be stopped or he would consume everything. And even working together with all their combined power, they couldn't kill him. They could only curse him, transform him into his own opposite and trap him in a cycle of self-destruction. That's not a victory, that's barely containing a threat they couldn't actually defeat. His realm was expanding across the seas of oblivion continuously, not through war, not through trickery, but through perfect, methodical, inevitable conquest. Every era, more territory. Every era, more of oblivion under absolute order. He was mathematically certain to eventually control everything, and there was no way to stop it through normal means. The knowledge thing seals it. He didn't just know the future like Hermaeus Mora observes possibilities. He could calculate it with perfect accuracy. Every action, every consequence, predicted through pure logical deduction. You can't surprise him. You can't outmaneuver him. He's already accounted for every possible move you could make and planned around it. Ithelia is the only one who comes close, and yeah, she can rewrite reality and access infinite parallel worlds. But you know what? She got stopped. By Hermaeus Mora's planning and a mortal with some artifacts, she had to be talked down and chose to exile herself. Jyggalag didn't choose anything. It took a cosmic coalition to force transformation on him, and the second that curse broke, he was free and unchanged. Mehrunes Dagon needed Akatosh himself to beat him. Molag Bal needed a mortal wielding the Amulet of Kings. Those are divine-level interventions. Jyggalag needed every Daedric prince working in concert, and even that wasn't enough to actually destroy him. So yeah, Jyggalag, the Prince of Order, the one so powerful that his fellow princes broke every rule they had, violated their own natures, and worked together for the only time in history just to contain him. That's the strongest, period.